Samuel R. Delany, The Star Pit. 2 glass panes with dirt between and little tunnels from cell to cell. When I was a kid, I had an ant colony. But once some of our 4 to 6-year-olds built an equilibrium with 6-foot plastic panels and grooved aluminum bars to hold corners and top down. They put it out on the sand. There was a mud puddle against one wall, so you could see what was going on underwater. Sometimes segment worms crawling through the reddish earth hit the sides so their tunnels were visible for a few inches. In hot weather, the inside of the plastic got coated with mist and droplets. The small round leaves on the litmus vines changed from blue to pink. Blue to pink as clouds coursed the sky and the pH of the photosensitive soil shifted slightly. The kids would run out before dawn and belly down naked in the cool sand with their chins on the backs of their hands and stare in the half-dark till the red mill wheel of Sigma lifted over the bloody sea. The sand was maroon then, and the flowers of the crystal plants looked like rubies in the dim light of the giant sun. Up the beach the jungle would begin to whisper, while somewhere an anywort would start warbling. The kids would giggle and poke each other and crowd closer. Then Sigma Prime, the second member of the binary, would flare like thermite on the water, and crimson clouds would bleach from coral, through peach to foam. The kids, half on top of each other now, lay like a pile of copper ingots, with sun-streaks in their hair. Even on little Antony, my oldest, whose hair was black and curly like bubbling oil, like his mother's. The down on the small of his 2-year-old back was a white haze across the copper, if you looked that close to see. More children came to squat and lean on their knees, or kneel with their noses an inch from the walls, to watch like young magicians as things were born, grew, matured, and other things were born. Enchanted at their own construction, they stared at the miracles in their live museum. A small red seed lay camouflaged in the silt by the lake puddle. One evening, as white Sigma Prime left the sky violet, it broke open into a brown larva as long and of the same color as the first joint of Antony's thumb. It flipped and swirled in the mud a couple of days, then crawled to the first branch of the nearest crystal plant to hang exhausted, headed down from the tip. The brown flesh hardened, thickened, grew black, shiny. And one morning the children saw the onyx chrysalis crack, and by second dawn there was an emerald-eyed flying lizard buzzing at the plastic panels. "Oh, look, Da!" they called to me. "It's trying to get out." The speed-hazed creature butted at the corner for a few days, then settled at last to crawling around the broad leaves of the miniature shade palms. When the season grew cool, and there was the annual debate over whether the kids should put tunics on — they never stayed in them more than 20 minutes anyway — the jewels of the crystal plant misted. Their facets coarsened, and they fell like gravel. There were little 4-cupped sloths, too, big as a 6-year-old's fist. Most of the time they pressed their velvety bodies against the walls and stared longingly across the sand with their retractable eye clusters. Then 2 of them swelled for about 3 weeks. We thought at first it was some bloating infection, but one evening there were a couple of litters of white velvet balls half hidden by the low leaves of the shade palms. The parents were occupied now and didn't pine to get out. There was a rock half in and half out of the puddle, I remember, covered with what I'd always called mustard moss when I saw it in the wild. Once it put out a brush of white hairs, and one afternoon the children ran to collect all the adults they could drag over. "Look, oh, Da, Ma, look!" The hairs had detached themselves and were walking around the water's edge, turning end over end along the soft soil. I had to leave for work in a few minutes and haul some spare drive parts out to Tau Sitai. But when I got back 5 days later, the hairs had taken root, thickened, and were already putting out the small round leaves of litmus vines. Among the new shoots, lying on her back, claws curled over her wrinkled belly, eyes cataracted like the foggy jewels of the crystal plant — she'd dropped her wings like cellophane days ago — was the flying lizard. Her pearl throat still pulsed, but as I watched, it stopped. Before she died, however, she had managed to deposit, nearly camouflaged in the silt by the puddle, a scattering of red seeds. I remember getting home from another job where I'd been doing the maintenance on the shuttle boats for a crew putting up a ring station to circle a planet itself circling Aldebaran. I was gone a long time on that one. When I left the landing complex and wandered out toward the tall weeds at the edge of the beach, I still didn't see anybody. Which was just as well, because the night before I'd put on a real winner with the crew to celebrate the completion of the station. That morning I'd taken a couple more drinks at the landing bar to undo last night's damage. Never works. The swish of frond on frond was like clashed rasps. Sun on the sand reached out fingers of pure glare and tried to gouge my eyes. I was glad the home compound was deserted, because the kids would have asked questions I didn't want to answer. The adults wouldn't ask anything, which was even harder to answer. Then down by the ecologarium, a child screeched, and screeched again. Then Antony came hurtling toward me, half running, half on all fours, and flung himself on my leg. "Oh, Da! Why? Oh, why, Da?" I had kicked my boots off and shrugged my shirt back at the compound porch, but I still had my overalls on. Antony had 2 fists full of my pants leg and wouldn't let go. "Hey, kid boy, what's the matter?" When I finally got him on my shoulder, he butted his blubber-wet face against my collarbone. "Oh, Da, it's crazy. It's all crazy." His voice rose to lose itself in sobs. "What's crazy, kid boy? Tell Da." Antony held my ear and cried while I walked down to the plastic enclosure. They'd put a small door in one wall with a 2-number combination lock that was supposed to keep this sort of thing from happening. I guess Antony learned the combination from watching the older kids, or maybe he just figured it out. One of the young sloths had climbed out and wandered across the sand about 3 feet. "See, Da, it crazy, it bit me, Da." Sobs became sniffles as he showed me a puffy, bluish place on his wrist, centered on which was a tiny crescent of pinpricks. Then he pointed jerkily to the creature. It was shivering, and bloody froth spluttered from its lip flaps. All the while it was digging futilely at the sand with its clumsy cups, eyes retracted. Now it fell over, kicked, tried to right itself, breath going like a flutter valve. "It can't take the heat," I explained, reaching down to pick it up. It snapped at me, and I jerked back. "Sunstroke, kid boy. Yeah, it is crazy." Suddenly it opened its mouth wide, let out all its air, and didn't take in any more. "It's all right now," I said. 2 more of the baby sloths were at the door, front cups over the sill, staring with bright black eyes. I pushed them back with a piece of seashell and closed the door. Antony kept looking at the white fur ball on the sand. "Not crazy now?" "It's dead," I told him. "Dead because it went outside, Da?" I nodded. "And crazy?" He made a fist and ground something already soft and wet around his upper lip. I decided to change the subject, which was already too close to something I didn't like to think about. "Who's been taking care of you, anyway?" I asked. "You're a mess, kid boy. Let's go and fix up that arm. They shouldn't leave a fellow your age all by himself." We started back to the compound. Those bites infect easily, and this one was swelling. "Why it go crazy? Why it die when it go outside, Da?" "Can't take the light," I said as we reached the jungle. "They're animals that live in shadow most of the time. The plastic cuts out the ultraviolet rays, just like the leaves that shade them when they run loose in the jungle. Sigma Prime's high on ultraviolet. That's why you're so good-looking, kid boy. I think your ma told me their nervous systems are on the surface, all that fuzz. Under the ultraviolet, the enzymes break down so quickly that—" "Does this mean anything to you at all?" "Uh-uh." Antony shook his head. Then he came out with, "Wouldn't it be nice to—" He admired his bite while we walked. "If some of them could go outside, just a few?" That stopped me. There were sunspots on his blue-black hair. Fronds reflected faint green on his brown cheek. He was grinning, little and wonderful. Something that had been anger in me a lot of times momentarily melted to raging tenderness, whirling about him like the dust in the light striking down at my shoulders, raging to protect my son. "I don't know about that, kid boy." "Why not?" "It might be pretty bad for the ones who had to stay inside," I told him. "I mean, after a while." "Why?" I started walking again. "Come on, let's fix your arm and get you cleaned up." I washed the wet stuff off his face and scraped the dry stuff from beneath it, which had been there at least 2 days. Then I got some antibiotic into him. "You smell funny, Da." Never mind how I smell. Let's go outside again. I put down a cup of black coffee too fast, and it and my hangover had a fight in my stomach. I tried to ignore it and do a little looking around, but I still couldn't find anybody. That got me mad. I mean, he's independent, sure, he's mine, but he's only 2. Back on the beach, we buried the dead sloth in sand. Then I pointed out the new, glittering stalks of the tiny crystal plants. At the bottom of the pond, in a jellied mass of anywort eggs, you could see the tadpole forms quivering already. An orange-fringed shelf fungus had sprouted nearly 8 inches since it had been just a few black spores on a pile of dead leaves 2 weeks back.
"Grow up,"
Antony chirped with nose and fists against the plastic.
"Everything grow up and up."
That's right. He grinned at me.
"I grow."
You sure as hell do.
"You grow?"
Then he shook his head twice, once to say no, and the second time because he got a kick from shaking his hair around. There was a lot of it.
"You don't grow. You don't get any bigger. Why don't you grow?"
I do too, I said indignantly, just very slowly. Antony turned around, leaned on the plastic, and moved one toe at a time in the sand. I can't do that. Watching me. You have to grow all the time, I said. Not necessarily get bigger, but inside your head you have to grow, kid boy. For us human-type people, that's what's important. And that kind of growing never stops. At least it shouldn't. You can grow, kid boy, or you can die. That's the choice you've got, and it goes on all of your life. He looked back over his shoulder.
"Grow up all the time, even if they can't get out."
Yeah, I said, and was uncomfortable all over again. I started pulling off my overalls for something to do. Even the zipper got stuck. God damn it! If you can't get out. It came loose. The rest got back that evening. They'd been on a group trip around the foot of the mountain. I did a little shouting to make sure my point got across about leaving Antony alone. Didn't do much good. You know how family arguments go. "You didn't want to come. We weren't going to force." "So what? He's got to learn to do things he doesn't want." "Like some other people I could mention?" "Now look, it's a healthy group. Don't you want him to grow up a healthy—" "I'll be happy if he just grows up, period. No food, no medical—"
"But the server was chock full of food. He knows how to use it."
"Look, when I got home the kid's arm was swollen all the way up to his elbow." And so on and so forth, with Antony sitting in the middle, looking confused. When he got confused enough, he ended it all by announcing matter-of-factly,
"Duh, smell funny when he came home."
Everyone got quiet. Then someone said,
"Oh, Vime, you didn't come home that way again? I mean in front of the children?"
I said a couple of things I was sorry for later and stalked off down the beach, on a 4-mile hike. Times I got home from work? The ecologarium? I guess I'm just leading up to this one. The particular job had taken me a hectic week to get. It was putting back together a battleship that was gutted somewhere off Audiobook. Only when I got there, I'd found I'd already been laid off. That particular war was over. They're real quick now. So I scraped and lied and browned my way into a repair gang that was servicing a traveling replacement station. Generally, I had to humiliate myself to get the job because every other drive mechanic from the battleship fiasco was after it, too. Then I got canned the first day because I came to work smelling funny. It took me another week to hitch a ride back to Sigma. Didn't even have enough to pay passage. But I made a deal with the pilot. I'd do half the driving for him. We were an hour out, and I was at the controls when something I'd never heard of happened. We came this close to ramming another ship. Consider how much empty space there is. The chances are infinitesimal. And on top of that, every ship should be broadcasting an identification beam at all times. But this big, bulbous Keeler intergalactic slid by so close I could see her through the front viewport. Our inertia system went nuts. We jerked around in the stasis world from the Keeler. I slammed on the video intercom and shouted, "You great big stupid, stupid!" So mad and scared I couldn't say anything else. The Golden, piloting the ship, stared at me from the view screen with mildly surprised annoyance. I remember his face was just slightly more negroid than mine. Our little Serpentina couldn't hurt him, but had we been even 100 meters closer, we might have ionized. The other pilot came bellowing from behind the sleeper curtain and started cursing me out. "Damn it!" I shouted. "It was one of those—" and lost all the profanity I know to my rage. "Golden! This far into Galactic Center? Come off it. They should be hanging out around the star pit." "It was a Keeler drive," I insisted. "It came right in front of us." I stopped because the control stick was shaking in my hand. You know the Serpentina colophon? They have it in the corner of the view screen and raised in plastic on the head of the control knobs. Well, it got pressed into the ham of my thumb so you could make it out for an hour. I was squeezing the control rod that tight. When he set me down, I went straight to the bar to cool off, and got in a fight. When I reached the beach, I was broke. I had a bloody nose, I was sick and furious. It was just after sunset, and the kids were squealing around the ecologarium. Then one little girl I didn't even recognize ran up to me and jerked my arm.
Da, oh, Da, come look. The antiwarts are just about to—"
I pushed her, and she sat down surprised on the sand. I just wanted to get to the water and splash something cold on my face, because every minute or so it would start to burn. Another bunch of kids grabbed me, shouting,
Da, the antiwarts, Da,
and tried to pull me over. First, I took 2 steps with them. Then I just swung my arms out. I didn't make a sound, but I put my head down and barreled against the plastic wall. Kids screamed. Aluminum snapped. The plastic cracked and went down. My boots were still on, and I kicked and kicked at red earth and sand. Shade palms went down, and the leaves tore under my feet. Crystal plants broke like glass rods beneath a piece of plastic. A swarm of lizards flitted up around my head. Some of the red was Sigma. Some was what burned behind my face. I remember I was still shaking and watching water run out of the broken lake over the sand, then soak in so that the wet tongue of sand expanded a little, raised just a trifle around the edge. Then I looked up to see the kids coming back down the beach, crying, shouting, afraid, and clustered around Antoni's ma. She walked steadily toward me, steady because she was a woman and they were children. But I saw the same fear in her face. Antoni was on her shoulder. Other grown-ups were coming behind her. Antoni's ma was a biologist, and I think she had suggested the ecologarium to the kids in the first place. When she looked up from the ruin I'd made, I knew I'd broken something of hers, too. An odd expression got caught in the features of her. I remember it, oh, so beautiful. Face with compassion alongside the anger, contempt alongside the fear. "Oh, for pity's sake, Vime," she cried, not loudly at all, "won't you ever grow up?" I opened my mouth, but everything I wanted to say was too big and stayed wedged in my throat.
Grow up?
Antoni repeated and reached for a lizard that buzzed his head.
Everything stopped growing up now.
He looked down again at the wreck I'd made.
All broken. Everything get out.
He didn't mean to break it, she said to the others for me, then knifed my gratitude with a look. We'll put it back together. She put Antoni on the sand and picked up one of the walls. After they got started, they let me help. A lot of the plants were broken, and only the antiwarts who'd completed metamorphosis could be saved. The flying lizards were too curious to get far away, so they netted them and got them back inside. I guess I didn't help that much, and I wouldn't say I was sorry. They got just about everything back except the sloths. We couldn't find them. We searched for a long time, too. The sun was down, so they should have been all right. They can't negotiate the sand with any speed, so couldn't have reached the jungle. But there were no tracks, no nothing. We even dug in the sand to see if they'd buried themselves. It wasn't till more than a dozen years later I discovered where they went. For the present, I accepted Antoni's mildly adequate,
"They just must have got out again."
Not too long after that, I left the procreation group. Went off to work one day, didn't come back. But like I said to Antoni, you either grow or die. I didn't die. Once I considered returning, but there was another war, and suddenly there wasn't anything to return to. Some of the group got out alive. Antoni and his ma didn't. I mean, there wasn't even any water left on the planet. When I finally came to the star pit myself, I hadn't had a drink in years. But working there out on the galaxy's edge did something to me, something to the part that grows I'd once talked about on the beach with Antoni. If it did it to me, it's not surprising it did it to Ratlet and the rest. And I remember a black-eyed creature pressed against the plastic wall, staring across impassable sands. Perhaps it was knowing this was as far as you could go. Perhaps it was the Golden. Golden? I hadn't even joined the group yet when I first heard the word. I was 16 and a sophomore at Luna Vocational. I was born in a city called New York on a planet called Earth. Luna is its one satellite. You've heard of the system, I'm sure. That's where we all came from. A few other things about it are well known. Unless you're an anthropologist, though, I doubt you've ever been there. It's way the hell off the main trading routes and pretty primitive. I was a drive mechanics major on scholarship, living in and studying hard. All morning in practical theory, a ridiculous name for a ridiculous class, I thought then, we'd been putting together a model Keeler intergalactic drive. Throughout those dozens of helical inserts and superinertia organis sensitives, I had been silently cursing my teacher, thinking about like everyone else in the class, so what if they can fly these jalopies from one galaxy to another? Nobody will ever be able to ride in them. Not with the psychic and physiologic shells hanging around this cluster of the universe. Back in the dormitory, I was lying on my bed, scraping a graphite lubricant from my nails with the end of my slide rule and half reading at a folded-back copy of The Young Mechanic, when I saw the article and the pictures. Through some freakish accident, 2 people had been discovered who didn't crack up at 20,000 light-years off the galactic rim, who didn't die at 25,000. They were both psychological freaks with some incredible hormone imbalance in their systems. One was a little Oriental girl. The other was an older man, blond and big-boned, from a cold planet circling Cygnus Beta. Golden. They looked sullen as hell, both of them. Then there were more articles, more pictures in the economic journals, the sociology student letters, the legal bulletins, as various fields began acknowledging the impact that the Golden and the sudden birth of intergalactic trade were having on them. The head of some commission summed it up with a statement, "Though interstellar travel has been with us for 3 centuries, intergalactic trade has been an impossibility, not because of mechanical limitations, but rather because of barriers that till now we have not even been able to define. Some psychic shock causes insanity in any human, or for that matter, any intelligent species or perceptual machine or computer, that goes more than 20,000 light-years from the galactic rim. Then complete physiological death, as well as recording breakdown in computers that might replace human crews. Complex explanations have been offered, none completely satisfactory. But the base of the problem seems to be this. As the nature of space and time are relative to the concentration of matter in a given area of the continuum, the nature of reality itself operates by the same or similar laws. The averaged mass of all the stars in our galaxy controls the reality of our microsector of the universe. But as a ship leaves the galactic rim, reality breaks down and causes insanity and eventual death for any crew, even though certain mechanical laws, though not all, appear to remain, for reasons we don't understand, relatively constant. Save for a few barbaric experiments done with psychedelics at the dawn of spatial travel, we have not even developed a vocabulary that can deal with reality apart from its measurable physical expression. Yet, just when we had to face the black limit of intergalactic space, bright resources glittered within. Some few of us, whose sense of reality has been shattered by infantile, childhood, or prenatal trauma, whose physiological orientation makes life in our interstellar society painful or impossible, not all, but a few of these golden, at which point there was static, or the gentleman coughed, can make the crossing and return. The name Golden, sans noun, stuck. Few was the understatement of the millennium. Slightly less than 1 human being in 34,000 is a Golden. A couple of people had pictures of emptying all mental institutions by just shaking them out over the galactic rim. Didn't work like that. The particular psychosis and endocrine setup was remarkably specialized. Still, back then there was excitement, wonder, anticipation, hope, admiration in the word. Admiration for the ones who could get out. "Golden?" Ratlet said when I asked him. He was working as a grease monkey out here in the star pit over Pulaski's. "Born with the word. Grew up with it. Warn't no first time with me."
Though I remember when I was about 6, right after the last of my parents was killed, and I was hiding out with a bunch of other lice in a broke-open packing crate in an abandoned freight yard near the ruins of Helios on Creton 7. That's where I was born, I think. Most of the city had been starved out by then. But somebody was getting food to us. There was this old crookback character who was hiding too. He used to sit on the top of the packing crate and bang his heels on the aluminum slats and tell us stories about the stars. Had a couple of rags held with twists of wire for clothes, missing 2 fingers off one hand. He kept plucking the loose skin under his chin with those grimy talons, and he talked about them. So I asked, "Golden what, sir?" He leaned forward so that his face was like a mahogany bruise on the sky and croaked, "They've been out, I tell you, seen more than even you or I. Human and inhuman, kid boy, mothered by women and fathered by men, still they live by their own laws and walk their own ways."
Ratlet and I were sitting under a street lamp with our feet over the edge where the fence had broken. His hair was like breathing flame in the wind. His single earring glittered. Star-flecked infinity dropped away below our boot soles, and the wind created by the stasis field that held our atmosphere down — we call it the whirlwind out here because it's never cold and never hot, and like nothing on any world — whipped his black shirt back from his bony chest as we gazed on galactic night between our knees. "I guess that was back during the Second Khyber War," he concluded. "Khyber War?" I asked. "Which one was that?" He shrugged. "I just know it was fought over possession of a couple of tons of dialium. That's the polarized element the Golden brought back from Loop Galaxy. They used Iadna ships to fight it. That's why it was such a bad war. I mean, worse than usual." "Iadna? That's a drive I don't know anything about." "Some Golden saw the plans for them in a civilization in Magellanic 9. "Oh," I said. "And what was Khyber?" "It was a weapon, a sort of fungus the Golden brought back from some overrun planet on the rim of Andromeda. It's deadly. Only they were too stupid to bring back the antitoxin." "That's Golden for you." "Yeah. You ever notice about Golden, Vime? I mean, just the word. I found out all about it from my publisher once. It's semantically unsettling." "Really?" I said. "So are they. Unsettling, I mean."
I'd just finished a rough day installing a rebuilt Keeler in a quantum transport hull that just wasn't big enough. The Golden, having the job done, stood over my shoulder the whole time, and every hour he'd come out with a sort of added instruction that would make the next 61 minutes miserable. But I did it. The Golden paid me in cash, and without a word climbed into the lift, and 2 minutes later, while I was still washing the grease off, the damn 500-ton hulk began to whistle for takeoff. Sandy, a young fellow who'd come back looking for a temporary mechanic's job 3 months back, but hadn't given me cause to fire him yet, barely had time to pull the big Waldos out of the way and go scooting into the shock chamber when the 300-meter doofus tore loose from the grapplers. And Sandy, who, like a lot of these youngsters drifting around from job to job, is usually sort of quiet and vague, got loud and specific. 2,000 pounds of non-shock-proof equipment out there. Ruin it all if he could. I'm not expendable. I don't care what these Golden out here." While the ship hove off where only the Golden go, I just flipped on the no open sign, left the rest of the grease where it was, left the hangar, and hunted up Ratlet. So there we were, under that street lamp, sitting on the edge in the whirlwind. "Golden," Ratlet said under the roar. "It would be much easier to take if it were grammatically connected to something. Golden ones, golden people, or even one gold, 2 golden.
Male Golden, female Goldine?
Something like that. It's not an adjective, it's not a noun. My publisher told me that for a while it was written with a dash after it that stood for whatever it might modify."
I remembered the dash. It was an uneasy joke, a fill-in for that cough. Golden what? People had already started to feel uncomfortable. Then it went past joking and back to just Golden.
Think about that, Vime. Just Golden. 1, 2, or 3 of them.
"That's something to think about, kid boy," I said.
Ratlet had been 6 during the Khyber War. Square that and add it once again for my age now. Ratlets, double 6 and add 1. I like kids, and they like me, but that may be because my childhood left me a lot younger at 42 than I should be. Ratlet's had left him a lot older than any 13-year-old has a right to be. "No Golden took part in the war," Ratlet said.
"They never do."
I watched his thin fingers get all tangled together.
After 2 divorces, my mother ran off with a salesman and left me and 4 siblings with an alcoholic aunt for a year. Yeah, they still have divorces, monogamous marriages and stuff like that where I was born. Like I say, it's pretty primitive. I left home at 15, made it through vocational school on my own, and learned enough about what makes things fly to end up, after that disastrous marriage I told you about earlier, with my own repair hangar on the starpit. Compared with Ratlet, I had a stable childhood. That's right, he lost the last parent he remembered when he was 6. At 7, he was convicted of his first felony, after escaping from Creton 7. But part of his treatment at hospital cum reform school, cum prison, was to have the details lifted from his memory.
Did something to my head back there. That's why I never could learn to read, I think.
For the next couple of years, he ran away from one foster group after the other. When he was 11, some guy took him home from Play Planet, where he'd been existing under the boardwalk on discarded hot dogs, souvlakia, and falafel. Fat, smoked perfumed cigarettes. Name was Vivian. Turned out to be the publisher. Ratlet stayed for 3 months, during which time he dictated a novel to Vivian.
Protecting my honor,
Ratlet explained.
I had to do something to keep him busy.
The book sold a few 100,000 copies as a precocious curiosity among many, but Ratlet had split. The next years he was involved as a shill in some illegality I never understood. He didn't either.
But I bet I made $1 million, Vime. I earned at least $1 million.
It's possible. At 13 he still couldn't read or write, but his travels had gained him fair fluency in 3 languages. A couple of weeks ago he'd wandered off a stellar tramp, dirty and broke, here at the Starpit, and I'd gotten him a job as grease monkey over at Pulaski's. He leaned his elbows on his knees, his chin in his hands.
Vime, it's a shame.
What's a shame, kid boy?
To be washed up at my age, a has-been, to have to grapple with the fact that this,
he spat at a star,
is it.
He was talking about Golden again. You still have a chance, I shrugged. Most of the time it doesn't come out till puberty. He cocked his head up at me.
I've been pubescent since I was 9, Buster.
Excuse me.
I feel cramped in, Vime. There's all that night out there to grow up in, to explore.
There was a time, I mused, when the whole species was confined to the surface, give or take a few feet up or down, of a single planet. You've got the whole galaxy to run around in. You've seen a lot of it, yeah, but not all.
But there are billions of galaxies out there. I want to see them. In all the stars around here, there hasn't been one life form discovered that's based on anything but silicon or carbon. I overheard 2 Golden in a bar once talking. There's something in some galaxy out there that's big as a star, neither dead nor alive, and sings. I want to hear it, Vime.
Ratlet, you can't fight reality.
Oh, go to sleep, Grandpa.
He closed his eyes and bent his head back until the cords of his neck quivered.
What is it that makes a Golden? A combination of physiological and psychological what?
It's primarily some sort of hormonal imbalance as well as an environmentally conditioned thalamic personality response.
Yeah.
His head came down.
And that X-chromosome heredity nonsense they just connected up with it a few years back? But all I know is they can take the stasis shift from galaxy to galaxy. Where you and I, Vime, if we get more than 20,000 light-years off the rim, we're dead.
Insane at 20,000, I corrected. Dead at 25.
Same difference.
He opened his eyes. They were large, green, and mostly pupil.
You know I stole a Golden belt once? Rolled it off a staggering slob about a week ago who came out of a bar and collapsed on the corner. I went across the pit to Cali J, where nobody knows me, and warred around for a few hours just to see if I felt different.
You did? Ratlet had lengths of gut that astounded me about once a day.
I didn't, but people walking around me did. Wearing that 2-inch band of yellow metal around my waist, nobody in the world could tell I wasn't a Golden, just walking by on the street without talking to me a while or making hormone tests. And wearing that belt, I learned just how much I hated Golden, because I could suddenly see in almost everybody who came by how much they hated me while I had that metal belt on. I threw it over the edge.
Suddenly he grinned.
Maybe I'll steal another one.
You really hate them, Ratlet? He narrowed his eyes at me and looked superior.
Sure, I
talk about them, I told him. Sometimes they're a pain to work for, but it's not their fault we can't take the reality shift.
I'm just a child,
he said evenly.
incapable of such fine reasoning. I hate them." He looked back at the night. "How can you stand to be trapped by anything, Vime?"
3 memories crowded into my head when he said that. First, I was standing at the railing of the East River, runs past this New York I was telling you about, at midnight, looking at the illuminated dragon of the Manhattan Bridge that spanned the water, then at the industrial fires flickering in bright smoky Brooklyn, and then at the template of Mercury street lamps behind me, bleaching out the playground and most of Houston Street. Then at the reflections in the water, here like crinkled foil, there like glistening rubber. At last, looked up at the midnight sky itself. It wasn't black, but dead pink, without a star. This glittering world made the sky a roof that pressed down on me, so I almost screamed. That time, the next night, I was 27 light-years away from Sol on my first star run. Second, I was visiting my mother after my first few years out. I was looking in the closet for something when this contraption of plastic straps and buckles fell on my head. "What's this, Ma?" And she smiled with a look of idiot nostalgia and crooned, "Why, that's your little harness, Vimy. Your first father and I would take you on picnics up at Bear Mountain and put you in that and tie you to a tree with about 10 feet of cord so you wouldn't get—" I didn't hear the rest because of the horror that suddenly flooded me, thinking of myself tied up in that thing. Okay, I was 20 and had just joined that beautiful procreation group a year back on Sigma and was the proud father of 3 and expecting 2 more. The 163 of us had the whole beach and 9 miles of jungle and half a mountain to ourselves. Maybe I was seeing Aunt Tony caught up in that thing, trying to catch a bird or a beetle or a wave, with only 10 feet of cord. I hadn't worn clothes for anything but work in a 12-month, and I was chomping to get away from that incredible place I had grown up in called an apartment, and back to wives, husbands, kids, and civilizations. Anyway, it was pretty terrible. The third, after I had left the Proc group, fled them, I suppose, guilty and embarrassed over something I couldn't name, still having nightmares once a month that woke me screaming about what was going to happen to the kids, even though I knew one point of group marriage was to prevent the loss of 1, 2, or 3 parents of being traumatic. Still wondering if I wasn't making the same mistakes my parents made, hoping my brood wouldn't turn out like me, or worse, like the kids you sometimes read about in the paper. Like Ratlet, though I hadn't met him yet, horribly suspicious that no matter how different I tried to be from my sires, it was just the same thing all over again. Anyway, I was on the ship bringing me to the Star Pit for the first time. I'd gotten talking to a Golden who, as Golden go, was a pretty regular gal. We'd been discussing inter- and intra-galactic drives. She was impressed I knew so much. I was impressed that she could use them and know so little. She was digging in a very girl way the 6'4", 210-pound drive mechanic with mildly grimy fingernails that was me. I was digging in a very boy way the slim, amber-eyed young lady who had seen it all. From the view deck we watched the immense artificial disk of the Star Pit approach, when she turned to me and said, in a voice that didn't sound cruel at all, "This is as far as you go, isn't it?" And I was frightened all over again, because I knew that on about 9 different levels she was right. Ratlet said, "I know what you're thinking." A couple of times when he'd felt like being quiet and I'd felt like talking, I may have told him more than I should. "Well, Cube, that for me, Dad. That's how trapped I feel." I laughed, and Ratlet looked very young again. "Come on," I said. "Let's take a walk." "Yeah." He stood. The wind fingered at our hair. "I want to go see Allegra." "I'll walk you as far as Kali G," I told him. "Then I'm going to go to bed." "I wonder what Allegra thinks about this business. I always find Allegra a very good person to talk to," he said sagely. "Not to put you down, but her experiences are a little more up-to-date than yours. You have to admit she has a modern point of view, plus the fact that she's older." Than Ratlet, anyway. She was 15.
I don't think being trapped ever really bothered her, I said. Which may be a place to take a lesson from. By Ratlett's standards, Allegra had a few things over me. In my youth, kids took to dope in their teens, 20s. Allegra was born with a 300-milligram-a-day habit on a bizarre narcotic that combined the psychedelic qualities of the most powerful hallucinogens with the addictiveness of the strongest depressants. I can sympathize. Allegra's mother was addicted, and the tolerance was passed with the blood plasma through the placental wall. Ordinarily, a couple of complete transfusions at birth would have gotten the newborn child straight, but Allegra was also a highly projective telepath. She projected the horrors of birth, the glories of her infantile hallucinated world on befuddled doctors. She was given her drug. Without too much difficulty, she managed to be given her drug every day since. Once I asked Allegra when she'd first heard of Golden, and she came back with this horror story. A lot were coming back from Tiber 44 cluster with psychic shock. The mental condition of Golden is pretty delicate, and sometimes very minor conflicts nearly ruin them. Anyway, the government that was sponsoring the importation of microsurgical equipment from some tiny planet in that galaxy to protect its interests hired Allegra, age 8, as a psychiatric therapist. I'd concretize their fantasies and make them work 'em through. In just a couple of hours, I'd have 'em back to their old, mean, stupid selves again. Some of them were pretty nice when they came to me. But there was a lot of work for her. Projective telepaths are rare. So they started withholding her drug to force her to work harder, then rewarding her with increased dosage. Up till then, she told me, I might have kicked it. But when I came away, they had me on double what I used to take. They pushed me past the point where withdrawal would be fatal. But I could have kicked it. Up till then, Vime. That's right. Age 8. Oh, yeah, the drug was imported by Golden from Cancer 9, and most of it goes through the Star Pit. Allegra came here because illegal imports are easier to come by, and you can get it for just about nothing, if you want it. Golden don't use it. The wind lessened as Ratlett and I started back. Ratlett began to whistle. In Cali Cay, the first night lamp had broken so that the level street was a tunnel of black. "Ratlett," I asked, "where do you think you'll be, in, say, 5 years?" "Quiet," he said. "I'm trying to get to the end of the street without bumping into the walls, tripping on something, or some other catastrophe. If we get through the next 5 minutes, all right, I'll worry about the next 5 years." He began whistling again. "Trip? Bump the walls?" "I'm listening for echoes." Again he commenced the little jets of music. I put my hands in my overall pouch and went on quietly, while Ratlett did the bat bit. Then there was a catastrophe, though I didn't realize it at the time. Into the circle of light from the remaining lamp at the other end of the street walked a Golden. His hands went up to his face, and he was laughing. The sound skittered in the street. His belt was low on his belly, the way the really down and broke. I just thought of a better way to describe him. The resemblance struck me immediately. He looked like Sandy, my mechanic, who is short, 24 years old, muscled like an ape, and wears his worn-out work clothes even when he's off duty. "I just want this job for a while, boss. I'm not staying out here at the Star Pit. As soon as I save up a little, I'm going to make it back in toward Galactic Center. It's funny out here, like dead." He gazes up through the opening in the hangar roof, where there are no clouds and no stars either. "Yeah, I'm just going to be here for a little while." "Fine with me, kid boy." That was 3 months back, like I say. He's still with me. He works hard, too, which puts him a cut above a lot of characters out here. Still, there was something about Sandy. On the other hand, Sandy's face is also hacked up with acne. His hair is always napped short over his wide head, but in these aspects the Golden was exactly Sandy's opposite. Come to think of it. Still, there was something about the Golden. He staggered, went down on his knees, still laughing, then collapsed. By the time we reached him, he was silent. With the toe of his boot, Ratlett nudged the hand from the belt buckle. It flopped, palm up, on the pavement. The little fingernail was 3/4 of an inch long, the way a lot of the Golden wear it.
Like his face, the tips of Sandy's fingers are all masticated wrecks. Still something.
Now isn't that something?
Ratlet shook his head.
What do you want to do with him, Vime?
Nothing, I said. Let him sleep it off.
Leave him so somebody can come along and steal his belt?
Ratlet grinned.
I'm not that nasty.
Weren't you just telling me how much you hated Golden?
I'd be nasty to whoever stole the belt and wore it. Nobody but a Golden should be hated that much.
Ratlet, let's go. But he had already kneeled down and was shaking the Golden's shoulder.
Let's get him to Allegra's and find out what's the matter with him.
He's just drunk.
Nope, Ratlet said, 'cause he don't smell funny.
Look, get back. I hoisted the Golden up and laid him across my neck, fireman's carry. Start moving, I told Ratlet. I think you're crazy. Ratlet grinned.
Thanks. Maybe he'll be grateful and lay some lepta on me for taking him in off the street.
You don't know Golden, I said. But if he does, split it with me.
Sure.
2 blocks later, we reached Allegra's place. But, like I say, Sandy, though well-built, is little, so I didn't have much trouble carrying him. Halfway up the tilting stairs, Ratlet said,
She's in a good mood.
I guess she is. The weight across my shoulders was becoming pleasant. I can't describe Allegra's place. I can describe a lot of places like it, and I can describe it before she moved in because I knew a derelict named Drunk Roach who slept on that floor before she did. You know what never-wear plastics look like when they wear out? What non-rust metals look like when they rust through? It was a shabby, crack-walled cubicle with dirt in the corners and scars on the window pane when Drunk Roach had his pile of blankets in the corner. But since the hallucinating projective telepath took it over, who knows what it had become. Ratlet opened the door on an explosion of classical beauty. "Come in," she said, accompanied by a symphonic arrangement scored on 24 staves with full chorus. "What's that you're carrying, Vime?" "Oh, it's a Golden." And before me, dizzying tides of yellow. Put him down quick, and let's see what's wrong." Hundreds of eyes, spotlights, glittering lenses. I lowered him to the mattress in the corner. "Oh," breathed Allegra. And the Golden lay on orange silk pillows in a teak barge drawn by swans, accompanied by flutes and drums. "Where did you find him?" she hissed, circling against the ivory moon on her broom. We watched the glowing barge, hundreds of feet below, sliding down the silvered waters between the crags. "We just picked him up off the street," Ratlet said. "Vime thought he was drunk, but he don't smell." "Was he laughing?" Allegra asked. Laughter rolled and broke on the rocks. "Yeah," Ratlet said, "just before he collapsed." "Then he must be from the undock expedition that just got back." Mosquitoes darted at us through wet fronds. The insects reeled among the leaves, upsetting droplets that fell like glass as, barely visible beyond the palms, the barge drifted on the bright, sweltering river. "That's right," I said, back-paddling frantically to avoid a hippopotamus that threatened to upset my kayak. "I'd forgotten they'd just come in." "Okay." Ratlet's breath clouded his lips. "I'm out of it. Let me in. Where did they come back from?" The snow hissed beneath the runners as we looked after the barge, nearly at the white horizon. "Undock, of course," Allegra said. The barking grew fainter. "Where did you think?" White eclipsed to black, and the barge was a spot gleaming in galactic night, flown on by laboring comets. "Undock is the furthest galaxy reached yet," I told Ratlet. "They just got back last week." "Sick," Allegra added. I dug my fingers against my abdomen to grab the pain. "They all come back sick." Fever heated blood bubbles in my eyes. I slipped to the ground, my mouth wide, my tongue like paper on my lips. Ratlet coughed. "All right, Allegra, cut it out. You don't have to be so dramatic." "Oh, I'm dreadfully sorry, Ratty, Vime." Coolth, water. Nausea swept away as solicitous nurses hastily put the pieces back together until everything was beautiful, or so austerely horrible it could be appreciated as beauty. "Anyway," she went on, "they came back with some sort of disease they picked up out there. Apparently it's not contagious, but they're stuck with it for the rest of their lives. Every few days they suddenly have a blackout. It's preceded by a fit of hysterics. It's just one of those stupid things they can't do anything about yet."
It doesn't hurt their being golden. Ratlet began to laugh. Suddenly he asked, "How long are they passed out for?" "Only a few hours," Allegra said. "It must be terribly annoying." And I began to feel mildly itchy in all sorts of unscratchable places, my shoulder blades, somewhere down my ear, the roof of my mouth. Have you ever tried to scratch the roof of your mouth? "Well," Ratlet said, "let's sit down and wait it out." "We can talk," Allegra said, patly. "That way it won't seem like such a long—" And hundreds of years later she finished, "Time." "Good," Ratlet said. "I wanted to talk to you. That's why I came up here in the first place." "Oh, fine," Allegra said. "I love to talk. I want to talk about love. Loving someone." An incredible yearning twisted my stomach, rose to block my throat. "I mean really loving someone." The yearning brushed the edge of agony. "Means you are willing to admit the person you love is not what you first fell in love with, not the image you first had. And you must be able to like them still for being as close to that image as they are, and avoid disliking them for being so far away." And through the tenderness that suddenly obliterated all hurt, Ratlet's voice came from the jeweled mosaics shielding him. "Allegra, I want to talk about loneliness." "I'm on my way home, kids," I said. "Tell me what happens with Prince Charming when he wakes up." They kept on talking while I went through the difficulties of finding my way out without Allegra's help. When my head cleared halfway down the stairs, I couldn't tell you if I'd been there 5 minutes or 5 years. When I got to the hangar next morning, Sandy was filing the 8-foot prongs on the conveyor. "You got a job coming in about 20 minutes, he called down from the scaffold. "I hope it's not another of those rebuilt jobs." "Yep." "Hell," I said. "I don't want to see another one for 6 weeks. All he wants is a general tune-up, maybe 2 hours. "Depends on where it's been," I said. "Where has it been?" "Just back from—" "Never mind." I started toward the office cubicle. "I think I'll put the books in order for the last 6 months. Can't let it go forever." "Boss," Sandy protested, "that'll take all day." "Then I'd better get started." I leaned back out the door. "Don't disturb me." Of course, as soon as the shadow of the hull fell over the office window, I came out in my coveralls, after giving Sandy 5 minutes to get it grappled and himself worried. I took the lift up to the 150 catwalk. When I stepped out, Sandy threw me a grateful smile from his scar-ugly face. The Golden had already started his instructions. When I reached them and coughed, the Golden turned to me and continued talking, not bothering to fill me in on what he had said before, figuring Sandy and I would put it together. You could tell this Golden had made his pile. He wore an immaculate blue tunic, with bronze codpiece, bracelets, and earrings. His hair was the same bronze, his skin was burned red-black, and his blue-gray eyes and tight-muscled mouth were proud, proud, proud. While I finished getting instructions, Sandy quietly got started unwelding the 8-foot seal of the organum so we could get to the checkout circuits. Finally, the Golden stopped talking. That's the only way you could tell he was finished, and leaned his angular 6.5 feet against the railing, clicking his glossy manicured nails against the pipe a few times. He had that same sword-length pinky nail, all white against his skin. I climbed out on the rigging to help Sandy. We had been at work 10 minutes when a kid, maybe 18 or 19, barefoot and brown, black hair hacked off shoulder length, a rag that didn't fit tucked around under his belt, and dirty, came wandering down the catwalk. His thumbs were hooked under the metal links. Golden. First I thought he'd come from the ship. Then I realized he'd just stalked into the hangar from outside and come up on the lift. "Hey, brother." The kid who was Golden hooked his thumbs in his belt as Sandy and I watched the dialogue from the rigging on the side of the hull. "I'm getting tired of hanging around this star pit. Just about broke as well. Where are you running to?" The man who was Golden clicked his nails again. "Go away, distant cousin." "Come on, brother, give me a berth on your lifeboat out of this dung heap to someplace worthwhile." "Go away, or I'll kill you." "Now, brother, I'm just a youngster adrift in this forsaken quarter of the sky. Come on now." Suddenly the blond man whirled from the railing, grabbed up a 4-foot length of pipe leaning beside him, and swung it so hard it hissed. The black-haired ragamuffin leapt back, and from under his rag snatched something black that, with a flick of that long nail, grew 7 inches of blade.
The bar swung again, caught the shoulder of the boy, then clattered against the hull. He shrieked and came forward. The two bodies locked, turned, fell. A gurgle, and the man's hand slipped from the neck of the ragamuffin. The boy scrambled back to his feet. Blood bubbled and popped on the hot blade. A last spasm caught the man. He flipped over, smearing the catwalk, rolled once more, this time under the rail, and dropped 250 feet to the cement flooring. Flick. Off went the power in the knife. The Golden wiped powdered blood on his thigh, spat over the rail, and said softly, "No relative of mine." Flick. The blade itself disappeared. He started down the catwalk. "Hey!" Sandy called when he got his voice back up into his throat. "What about... your ship?" There are no familial inheritance laws among Golden, only rights of plunder. The Golden glanced back. "I give it to you," he sneered. His shoulder must have been killing him, but he stepped into the lift like he was walking into a phone booth. That's a Golden for you. Sandy was horrified and bewildered. Behind his pitted ugliness there was that particularly wretched amazement only the totally vulnerable get when hurt. "That's the first time you've ever seen an incident like that?" I felt sorry for him. "Well, I wandered into Gerg's bar a couple of hours after they had that massacre, but the ones who started it were drunk." "Drunk or sober," I said. "Believe me, it doesn't mean that much difference to the way a man acts." I shook my head. "I keep forgetting you've only been here 3 months. Sandy, upset, looked down at the body on the flooring. "What about him? And the ship, boss?" "I'll call the wagon to come scrape him up." "The ship is yours." "Huh?" "He gave it to you. It'll stand up in court. It just takes one witness. Me." "What am I going to do with it? I would have to haul it to a junk station to get the salvage. Look, boss, I'm going to give it to you. Sell it or something. I'd feel sort of funny with it anyway." "I don't want it. Besides, then I'd be involved in the transaction and couldn't be a witness." "I'll be a witness." Ratlet stepped from the lift. "I caught the whole bit when I came in the door. Great acoustics in this place." He whistled again. The echo came back. Ratlet closed his eyes for a moment. "Ceiling is 120 feet overhead, more or less. How's that, huh?" 127, I said.
Ratlet shrugged. "I need more practice." "Come on, Sandy, you give it to him, and I'll be a witness."
"You're a miner," Sandy said. Sandy didn't like Ratlet. I used to think it was because Ratlet was violent and flamboyant, where Sandy was stolid and ugly. Even though Sandy kept protesting the temporariness of his job to me, I remember when I first got to the Star Pit those long, dying thoughts I'd had about leaving. It was a little too easy to see Sandy a mechanic here 30 years from now. I wasn't the only one it had happened to. Ratlet had been a grease monkey here 3 weeks. You tell me where he was going to be in 3 more? "Aren't you supposed to be working at Pulaski's?" Sandy said, turning back to the organum.
"Coffee break,"
Ratlet said.
"If you're going to give it away, Sandy, can I have it?"
"So you can claim salvage? Hell no."
"I don't want it for salvage. I want it for a present."
Sandy looked up again.
"Yeah, to give to someone else. Finish the tune-up and give it to me, okay?"
"You're nuts, kid boy," Sandy said. "Even if I gave you the ship, what you going to pay for the work with?"
"Oh, it'll only take a couple of hours. You're half done anyway. I figured you'd throw in the tune-up along with it. If you really want the money, I'll get it to you a little at a time. Vime, what sort of professional discount will you give me? I'm just a grease monkey, but I'm still in the business."
I whacked the back of his red head between a little too playfully and not too hard. "Come on, kid boy," I said. "Help me take care of Puddles downstairs. Sandy, finish it up, huh?" Sandy grunted and plunged both hands back into the organum. As soon as the lift door closed, Ratlet demanded, "You going to give it to me, Vime?" "It's Sandy's ship," I said.
"You tell him and he will."
I laughed. "You tell me how your Golden turned out when he came to. I assume that's who you want the ship for. What sort of fellow was he?" Ratlet hooked his fingers in the mesh wall of the lift cage and leaned back.
"There are only 2 types of Golden."
He began to swing from side to side.
"Mean ones and stupid ones."
He was repeating a standard line around the Star Pit. "I hope yours is stupid," I said, thinking of the 2 who'd just ruined Sandy's day and upset mine.
"Which is worse?"
Ratlet shrugged. "That is the rest of the line. When a Golden isn't being outright mean, he exhibits the sort of non-thinkingness that gets other people hurt. You remember the one that nearly rammed my ship, or the ones who didn't bother to bring back the Kyber antitoxin? But this one, Ratlet stood up, is unbelievably stupid. Yesterday you hated them. Today you want to give one a ship? He doesn't have one, Ratlet explained calmly, as though that warranted all change of attitude. And because he's sick, it'll be hard for him to find work unless he has one of his own. I see. We bounced on the silicon cushion. I pushed open the door and started for the office. What all went on after I left? I must have missed the best part of the evening. You did? Would I really need that much more sleep when I pass 35? Cut the cracks and tell me what happened. Well, Ratlet leaned against the office door jamb while I dialed necrotics. Allegra and I talked a little after you left, till finally we realized the Golden was awake and listening. Then he told us we were beautiful. I raised an eyebrow. Hmm? That's what he said. And he said it again, that watching us talk and think and build was one of the most beautiful things he'd ever seen. What have you seen? We asked him. And he began to tell us. Ratlet stopped breathing. Something built up. Then at once it came out. Oh, Vime, the places he's been. The things he's done, the landscapes he starved in, the hells where he's had to lie down and go to sleep but he was that tired, or the heavens he soared through screaming. All the things he told us about. And Allegra made them almost real so we could all be there again, just like she used to do when she was a psychiatrist. The stories, the places, the things. Sounds like it was really something. It was nothing, he came back vehemently. It was all in the tears that wash your eyes and the humming in your ears and the taste of your own saliva. It was just a hallucination, Vime. It wasn't real. Here his voice started cracking between the 2 octaves that were after it. But that thing I told you about, huge, alive and dead at the same time, like a star, way in another galaxy, well, he's seen it. And last night, but it wasn't real, of course, but I almost heard it sing. His eyes were huge and green and bright. I felt envious of anyone who could pull this reaction from kids like Allegra and Ratlet. So we decided, his voice fixed itself on the proper side of middle C, after he went to sleep and we lay awake talking a while longer, that we'd try and help him get back out there. Because it's wonderful. That's fascinating. When I finished my call, I stood up from the desk. I'd been sitting on the corner. After work, I'll buy you dinner, and you can tell me about all the things he showed you. He's still there at Allegra's, Ratlet said. Helplessly, I realized after a moment. I'm going back there right after work. Oh, I said. I didn't seem to be invited. It's just a shame, Ratlet said when we came out of the office, that he's so stupid. He glanced at the mess staining the concrete that had been a Golden, and shook his head. I'd gone back to the books when Sandy stepped in. All finished. What say we knock off for a beer or something, huh, boss? All right, I said, surprised. Sandy was usually as social as he was handsome. Want to talk about something? Yeah. He looked relieved. That business this morning got to your head, huh? Yeah, he repeated. There's a reason, I said as I made ready to go. It's got something to do with the psychological part of being a Golden. Meanness and stupidity, like everyone says. But however it makes them act here, it protects them from complete insanity at the 20,000 light-year limit. Yeah, I know. Sandy had started stepping uncomfortably from one boot to the other. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. It isn't? Uh-uh. Well, I asked after a moment. Is that kid the one you're going to give the ship to? Ratlet? Yeah. I haven't made up my mind about giving him the ship, I lied. Besides, legally, it's yours. You'll give it to him, Sandy said. And I don't care. I mean, not about the ship. But, boss, I gotta talk to you about that kid boy. Something about Sandy. I'd had never realized he'd thought of Ratlet as more than a general nuisance. Also, he seemed sincerely worried about me. I was curious. It took him all the way to the bar and through 2 beers, while I drank hot milk with honey, before he tongued and chewed what he wanted to say into shape. Boss, understand,
I'm nearer Ratlet than you, not only by age. My life's been more like his than yours has. You look at him like a son. To me, he's a younger brother. I taught him all the tricks. I don't understand him completely, but I see him clearer than you do. He's had a hard time, but not as hard as you think. He's going to take you, and I don't mean money, for everything he can. Where the hell that came from I didn't know and didn't like. He won't take anything I don't want to give. Boss, Sandy suddenly asked, you got kids of your own? 9, I said. Did have. I don't see the ones who are left now, for which their parents have always been just as happy, except one, and she was sensible enough to go along with the rest while she was alive. Oh, Sandy got quiet again. Suddenly he went scrambling in his overall pouch and pulled out a 3-inch Portapix. Those great greasy hands that I was teaching to pick up an eggshell through a 500-to-1 ratio Waldo were clumsily fumbling at the push-pull levers. I got kids, he said. See? 7 of them. And on the Portapix screen was a milling, giggling group of little apes who couldn't have been anybody else's. All the younger ones lacked was acne. They even shuffled back and forth from one foot to the other. They began to wave, and the speaker in the back chirped, Hi, Da. Hello, Da. Da, Mommy says to say we love you. Da, come home soon. I'm not with them now, he said throatily, but I'm going back soon as I get enough money so I can take them all out of that hellhole they're in now and get the whole family with a decent-sized proc group. There are only 23 adults there now, and things were beginning to rub. That's why I left in the first place. It was getting so nobody could talk to anyone else. That's pretty rough on all our kids, 32 when I left. But soon I'll be able to fix that. On the salary I'm paying you? This was the first I'd heard of any of this. That was my first reaction. My second, which I didn't voice, was, then why the hell don't you take that ship and sell it somehow? Over 40 and self-employed, the most romantic become monetarily practical. Sandy's fist came down hard on the bar. That's what I'm trying to say to you, boss. About you, about Ratlet. You've all got it in your heads that this out here is it, the end. Sure, you've got to accept limitations, but the right ones. Sure, you have to admit there are certain directions in which you cannot go, but once you do that, you find there are others where you can go as far as you want. Look, I'm not going to hang around the Star Pit all my life. And if I make my way back toward Galactic Center, make enough money so I can go home, raise my family the way I want, that's going forward even from here, not back. All right, I said. Quiet Sandy surprised me. I still wondered why he wasn't breaking his tail to get salvage on that ship that had just fallen into his hands, if getting back home with money in his pocket was that important. I'm glad you told me about yourself. Now, how does it all tie up with Ratlet? Here, Ratlet. He put the Portapix back in his overall pouch. Boss, Ratlet is the kid your own could be. You want to give him the advice, friendship, and concern he's never had that you couldn't give yours. But Ratlet is also the kid I was about 10 years ago. Started no place, with no destination, and no values to help figure out the way. Mixed up in all the wrong things, mainly because he's not sure where the right ones are. I don't think you're that much like Ratlet, I told him. I think you may wish you were. You've done a lot of the things Ratlet's done. Never write a novel? I tried to write a trilogy, Sandy said. It was lousy, but it pushed some things off my chest. So I got something out of it, even if nobody else did, which is what's important. Because now I'm a better mechanic for it, boss. Until I admit to myself what I can't do, it's pretty hard to work on what I can. Same goes for Ratlet. You too. That's growing up. And one thing you can't do is help Ratlet by giving him a ship he can't fly. Growing up brought back the picture. Sandy, did you ever build an ecologarium when you were a kid? No. The word had the puzzled inflection that means, don't even know what one is. I didn't either, I told him. Then I grinned and punched him on the shoulder. Maybe you're a little like me, too. Let's get back to work. Another thing, Sandy said, not looking very happy as he got off the stool.
Boss, that kid's going to hurt you. I don't know how, but it's going to seem like he hunted for how to make it hurt most, too. That's what I wanted to tell you, boss." I was going to urge him to take the ship, but he handed me the keys back in the hangar before I could say anything, and walked away. When people who should be clearing up their own problems start giving you advice. Well, there was something about Sandy I didn't like. If I can't take long walks at night with company, I take them by myself. I was strolling by the edge. The whirlwind was low, and the stellarplex, the huge heat-gathering mirror that's hung 9,000 miles off the pit, was out. It looks vaguely like the moon used to look from Earth, only twice as big, perfectly silver, and during the 3.5 days it faces us, it's always full. Then up ahead, where the fence was broken, I saw a ratlet kicking gravel over the edge. He was leaning against a lamppost, his shirt ballooning and collapsing at his back. "Hey, kid boy, isn't the Golden still at Allegra's?" Ratlet saw me and shrugged. "What's the matter?" I asked when I reached him. "Ate dinner yet?" He shrugged again. His body had the sort of ravenous metabolism that shows 24 hours without food. "Come on, I promised you a meal. Why so glum?" "Make it something to drink." "I know about your phony ID," I told him, "but we're going to eat. You can have milk just like me." No protests, no dissertation on the injustice of liquor laws. He started walking with me. "Come on, kid boy, talk to Gramps. Don't you want your ship any more?" Suddenly he clutched my forearm with white, bony fingers. My forearm is pretty thick, and he couldn't get his hands around it. "Fine, you've got to make Sandy give it to me now. You've got to." "Kid boy, talk to me." "Allegra." He let go. "And the Golden. Hate Golden, Vime. Always hate them. Because if you start to like one and then start hating again, it's worse." "What's going on? What are they doing?"
"He's talking. She's hallucinating. And neither one pays any attention to me."
"I see."
"You don't see. You don't understand about Allegra and me."
Then I was the only one who'd met the both of them who didn't. "I know you're very fond of each other." More could be said. Ratlet said more.
"We don't even like each other that much, Vime. But we need each other. Since she's been here, I get her medicine for her. She's too sick to go out much now. And when I have bad changes or sometimes bright recognitions, it doesn't matter. I bring them to her, and she builds pictures of them for me. And we explore them together and learn about things. When she was a psychiatrist for the government, she learned an awful lot about how people tick. And she's got an awful lot to teach me, things I've got to know."
15-year-old ex-psychiatrist drug addicts? Same sort of precocity that produces 13-year-old novelists. Get used to it.
"I need her now almost as much as she needs her medicine."
"Have you told the Golden you've got him a ship?"
"You didn't say I could have it yet."
"Well, I say so right now. Why don't we go back there and tell him he can be on his way? If we put it a little more politely, don't you think that'll do the trick?" He didn't say anything. His face just got back a lot of its life. "We'll go right after we eat." "What the hell? I'll buy you a drink. I may even have one with you." Allegra's was blinding when we arrived.
"Ratlet, oh, you're back. Hello, Vime. I'm so glad you're both here. Everything is beautiful tonight." "The Golden," Ratlet said. "Where's the Golden?" "He's not here."
A momentary throb of sadness dispelled with tortuous joy.
"But he's coming back."
"Oh," Ratlet said. His voice echoed through the long corridors of golden absence winding the room.
"'Cause I got a ship for him. All his. Just had a tune-up. He can leave any time he wants to."
"Here are the keys," I said, taking them from my pouch for dramatic effect. "Happen to have them right here." As I handed them to Ratlet, there were fireworks, applause, a fanfare of brasses.
"Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. Because guess what, Ratlet? Guess what, Vime?"
"I don't know," Ratlet said. "What?"
"I'm a Golden, too,"
Allegra cried from the shoulders of the cheering crowd that pushed its way through more admiring thousands.
"Huh?" Me, myself, and actually a honest-to-goodness Golden. I just found out today." "You can't be," Ratlet said. You're too old for it just to show up now. Something about my medicine, Allegra explained. It's dreadfully complicated.
The walls were papered with anatomical charts, music by Stockhausen.
Something in my medicine kept it from coming out until now, until a golden could come to me, drawing it up and out of the depths of me, till it burst out beautiful and wonderful and golden. Right now he's gone off to Carlson Labs with a urine sample for a final hormone check. They'll let him know in an hour, and he'll bring back my golden belt. But he's sure already, and when he comes back with it, I'm going to go with him to the galaxies as his apprentice. We're going to find a cure for his sickness and something that will make it so I won't need my medicine any more. He says if you have all the universe to roam around in, you can find anything you look for. But you need it all, not just a cramped little cluster of a few billion stars off in a corner by itself. Oh, I'm free, Ratlet, like you always wanted to be. While you were gone, he, did something to me that was golden. It triggered my hormonal imbalance.
The image came in through all 5 senses. Breaking the melodious ecstasy came the clatter of keys as Ratlet hurled them at the wall. I left feeling pretty odd. Ratlet had started to go too, but Allegra called him back.
Oh, now don't go on like that, Ratty. Act your age. Won't you stay and do me one little last favor?
So he stayed. When I untangled myself from the place and was walking home, I kept on remembering what Allegra had said about love. Work next day went surprisingly smoothly. Pulaski called me up about 10 and asked if I knew where Ratlet was because he hadn't been at work that day. "You're sure the kid isn't sick?" I said I'd seen him last night and that he was probably all right. Pulaski made a disgusted sound and hung up. Sandy left a few minutes early, as he'd been doing all week, to run over to the post office before it closed. He was expecting a letter from his group, he said. I felt strange about having given the ship away out from under him. It was sort of an immature thing to do, but he hadn't said anything about wanting it, and Ratlet was still doing Allegra favors, so maybe it would all work out for the best. I thought about visiting Allegra that evening, but there was the last 6 months' paperwork, still not finished. I went into the office, plugged in the computer, and got ready to work late. I was still at it sometime after 11 when the entrance light blinked, which meant somebody had opened the hangar door. I'd locked it. Sandy had the key, so he could come in early. So it was Sandy. I was ready for a break, and all set to jaw with him a while. He was always coming back to do a little work at odd hours. I waited for him to come into the office, but he didn't. Then the needle on the power gauge, which had been hovering near 0 with only the drain of the little office computer, swung up to 7. One of the big pieces of equipment had been cut in. There was some clean-up work to do, but nothing for a piece that size. Frowning, I switched off the computer and stepped out of the office. The first great opening in the hangar roof was mostly blocked with a bulk of Ratlet's, Sandy's, my ship. Stellar plex light curved smoothly over one side, then snarled in the fine webbing of lifts, catwalks, haul lines, and grappler rigging. The other 2 openings were empty, and 30-meter circles of silver dropped through assembly riggings to the concrete floor. Then I saw Sandy. He stood just inside the light from the last opening, staring up at the stellar plex, its glare lost in his ruined face. As he raised his left hand, when it started to move, I thought it looked too big. Light caught in the silver joints of the master gauntlet he was wearing. I knew where the power was going. As his hand went above his head, a shadow fell over him as a 15-foot slave talon swung from the darkness, its movement aping the master glove. He dropped his hand in front of his face, fingers curved. Metal claws lowered about him, beginning to quiver. Something about... He was trying to kill himself. I started running toward those hesitant, gaping claws, leaped into the grip, and reached over his shoulder to slap my forearm into the control glove just as he squeezed. Like I said, my forearm is big, but when those claws came together, it was a tight fit. Sandy was crying. "You stupid!" I shouted. "Inconsiderate, bird-brained, infantile—" At last I got the glove off. "Puerile!" Then I said, "What the hell is the matter with you?" Sandy was sitting on the floor now. His head hung between his shoulders. He stank. "Look," I said, maneuvering the talon back into place with the gross motion controls on the gauntlet's wrist.
If you want to go jump off the edge, that's fine with me. Half the gate's down anyway. But don't come here and mess up my tools. You can squeeze your own head up a little, but you're not going to bust up my glove here. You're fired. Now tell me what's wrong. I knew it wasn't going to work. Wasn't even worth trying. I know. His voice was getting all mixed up with the sobs. But I thought maybe... Beside his left hand was the Portapix, its screen cracked, and a crumpled piece of paper. I turned off the glove, and the talon stopped humming 20 feet overhead. I picked up the paper and smoothed it out. I didn't mean to read it all the way through. Dear Sanford, things have been difficult since you left, but not too hard, and I guess a lot of pressure is off everybody since you went away, and the kids are getting used to your not being here, though Bobby D. cried a lot at first. She doesn't now. We got your letter, and we're glad to hear things had begun to settle down for you, though Hank said you should have written before this, and was very mad, though Mary tried to calm him down, but he just said, when he married you, all he married me too, damn it, and I've got just as much right to be angry at him as you have. Which is true, Sanford, but I tell you what he said because it's a quote, and I think you should know exactly what's being said, especially since it expresses something we all feel on one level or another. You said you might be able to send us a little money if we wanted you home, which I think would be very good, the money I mean, though Laura said if I put that in the letter she would divorce us, but she won't, and like Hank I've got a right to say what I feel, which is, yes, I think you should send money, especially after that unpleasant business just before you left. But we are all agreed we do not want you to come back, and would rather not have the money if that's what it meant. That is hard, but true. As you can gather, your letter caused quite an upset here. I would like, which makes me different from the others, but is why they wanted me to write this letter, to hear from you again and keep track of what you are doing, because I used to love you very much, and I never could hate you. But like Bobby D., I have stopped crying. Sincerely. The letter was signed Joseph. In the lower corner were the names of the rest of the men and women of the group. Sandy? I know they wouldn't take me back. I didn't even really try, did I? But... Sandy, get up. But the children, he whispered. What's going to happen to the children? And there was a sound from the other end of the hangar. 3 stories up the side of the ship in the open hatchway, silvered by Starplex light, stood the Golden, the one Ratlet and I had found on the street. You remember what he looked like? He and Allegra must have sneaked in while Sandy and I were struggling with the Waldo. Probably they wanted to get away as soon as possible before Ratlet made real trouble, or before I changed my mind and got the keys back. All this ship-giving had been done without witnesses. The sound was the lift rising toward the hatchway. "The children," Sandy whispered again. The door opened, and a figure stepped out in the white light. Only it was Ratlet. It was Ratlet's red hair, his gold earring, his bouncy run as he started for the hatch, and there were links of yellow metal around his waist. Baffled, I heard the Golden call, "Everything checks out inside, brother. She'll fly us anywhere." And Ratlet cried, "I got the grapples all released, brother. Let's go." Their voices echoed down through the hangar. Sandy raised his head, squinting. As Ratlet leapt into the hatch, the Golden caught his arm around the boy's shoulder. They stood a moment, gazing at one another. Then Ratlet turned to look down into the hangar, back on the world he was about to leave. I couldn't tell if he knew we were there or not. Even as the hatch swung closed, the ship began to whistle. I hauled Sandy back into the shock chamber. I hadn't even locked the door when the thunder came, and my ears nearly split. I think the noise surprised Sandy out of himself. It broke something up in my head, but the pieces were falling wrong. "Sandy," I said, "we've got to get going." "Huh?" He was fighting the drunkenness, and probably his stomach, too. "I don't want to go nowhere." "You're going anyway. I'm sure as hell not going to leave you alone." When we were halfway up the stairs, I figured she wasn't there. I felt just the same. Was she with them in the ship? "My medicine. Please, can't you get my medicine? I've got to have my medicine. Please, please, please." I could just hear the small, high voice when I reached the door. I pushed it open. Allegra lay on the mattress, pink eyes wide, white hair frizzled around her balding skull. She was incredibly scrawny, her uncut nails black as Sandy's nubs without the excuse of hours in a graphite-lubricated gauntlet. The translucency of her pigmentless skin under how many days of dirt made my flesh crawl. Her face drew in around her lips like the flesh about a scar.
My medicine. Vime, is that you? You'll get my medicine for me, Vime. Won't you get my medicine?
Her mouth wasn't moving, but the voice came on. She was too weak to project on any but the oral level. It was the first time I'd seen Allegra without her cloak of hallucination, and it brought me up short. "Allegra," I said when I got hold of myself, "Ratlet and the Golden went off on the ship."
Ratlet. Oh, nasty, ratty, awful little boy. He wouldn't get my medicine. But you'll get it for me, won't you, Vime? I'm going to die in about 10 minutes, Vime. I don't want to die, not like this. The world is so ugly and painful now. I don't want to die here.
"Don't you have any?" I stared around the room I hadn't seen since Drunk Roach lived there. It was a lot worse. Dried garbage, piled first in one corner, now covered half the floor. The rest was littered with papers, broken glass, and a spilled can of something unrecognizable for the mold.
No, none here. Ratlet gets it from a man who hangs out in Jergs over on Cali-X. Oh, Ratlet used to get it for me every day. Such a nice little boy. Every day he would bring me my lovely medicine, and I never had to leave my room at all. You go get it for me, Vime.
"It's the middle of the night, Allegra. Jergs is closed, and Cali-X is all the way across the pit anyway. Couldn't even get there in 10 minutes, much less find this character and come back."
If I were well, Vime, I'd fly you there in a cloud of light pulled by peacocks and porpoises, and you'd come back to hautboys and tambourines bringing my beautiful medicine to me in less than an eye's blink. But I'm sick now, and I'm going to die.
There was a twitch in the crinkled lid of one pink eye. "Allegra, what happened?"
Ratlet's insane,
she projected with shocking viciousness. I heard Sandy behind me catch his breath.
Insane at 20,000 light-years, dead at 25.
"But his golden belt—"
It was mine. It was my belt, and he stole it, and he wouldn't get my medicine. Ratlet's not a golden. I'm a golden, Vine. I can go anywhere at all. I'm a golden. But I'm sick now. I'm so sick.
"But didn't the Golden know the belt was yours?"
Him? Oh, he's so incredibly stupid. He would believe anything. The Golden went to check some papers and get provisions and was gone all day to get my belt. But you were here that night. I asked Ratlet to go get my medicine and take another sample to Carlson's for me. But neither of them came back till I was very sick, very weak. Ratlet found the Golden, you see, told him that I'd changed my mind about going, and that he, Ratlet, was a Golden as well, that he'd just been to Carlson's. So the Golden gave him my belt, and off they went.
"But how in the world would he believe a kid with a story like that?"
You know how stupid a Golden can be, Vime. As stupid as they can be mean. Besides, it doesn't matter to him if Ratlet dies. He doesn't care if Ratlet was telling the truth or not. The Golden will live. When Ratlet starts drooling, throwing up blood, goes deaf first and blind last, and dies, the Golden won't even be sad. He's too stupid to feel sad. That's the way Golden are. But I'm sad, Vime, because no one will bring me my medicine.
My frustration had to lash at something. She was there. "You mean you didn't know what you were doing to Ratlet by leaving, Allegra? You mean you didn't know how much he wanted to get out and how much he needed you at the same time? You couldn't see what it would do to him if you deprived him of the thing he needed and rubbed his nose in the thing he hated both at once? You couldn't guess that he'd pull something crazy? Oh, kid girl, you talk about Golden. You're the stupid one."
Not stupid.
She projected quietly.
Mean, Vime. I knew he'd try to do something. I just didn't think he'd succeed. Ratlet is really such a child.
The frustration, spent, became rolling sadness. "Couldn't you have waited just a little longer, Allegra? Couldn't you have worked out the leaving some other way, not hurt him so much?"
I wanted to get out, Vime. To keep going and not be trapped, to be free. Like Ratlet wanted, like you want, like Sandy wants, like Golden. Only I was cruel. I had the chance to do it, and I took it. Why is that bad, Vime? Unless, of course, that's what being free means.
A twitch in the eyelid again. It closed. The other stayed open. "Allegra."
I'm a Golden, Vime. A Golden. And that's how Golden are. But don't be mad at me, Vime. Don't. Ratlet was mean, too, not to give me my
The other eye closed. I closed mine, too, and tried to cry, but my tongue was pushing too hard on the roof of my mouth. Sandy came to work the next day, and I didn't mention his being fired. The teletapes got hold of it, and the lead lines tried to make the thing as sordid as possible. Ex-con teenager, they didn't mention his novel, slays junkie sweetheart, dies horribly. They didn't mention the Golden either. They never do. Reporters pried around the hangar a while, trying to get us to say the ship was stolen. Sandy came through pretty well. "It was his ship," he grunted, putting lubricant in the gauntlets. "I gave it to him." "What are you going to give a kid like that a ship for? Maybe you loaned it to him. Dies horrible death in borrowed ship. That sounds okay." "Gave it to him. Ask the boss." He turned back toward the scaffolding. "He witnessed." "Look, even if you liked the kid, you're not saving him anything by covering up." "I didn't like him," Sandy said, "but I gave him the ship." "Thanks," I told Sandy when they left, not sure what I was thanking him for, but still feeling very grateful. "I'll do you a favor back." A week later, Sandy came in and said, "Boss, I want my favor." I narrowed my eyes against his belligerent tone. "So, you're going to quit at last. Can you finish out the week?" He looked embarrassed, and his hands started moving around in his overall pouch. "Well, yeah, I am going to leave, but not right away, boss. It is getting a little hard for me to take out here." "You'll get used to it," I said. "You know there's something about you that's, well, a lot like me. I learned. You will, too." Sandy shook his head. "I don't think I want to." His hand came out of his pocket. "See, I got a ticket." In his dirty fingers was a metal-banded card. "In 4 weeks I'm going back in from the star pit. Only I didn't want to tell you just now because, well, I did want this favor, boss." I was really surprised. "You're not going back to your group," I said. "What are you going to do?" He shrugged. "Get a job? I don't know. There are other groups. Maybe I've grown up a little bit." His fist went way down into his pouch, and he started to shift his weight back and forth on his feet. "About that favor, boss?" "What is it?" "I got to talking to this kid outside. He's really had it rough, Vime." That was the first and last time Sandy ever called me by name, though I'd asked him to enough times before. "And he could use a job." A laugh got all set to come out of me, but it didn't, because the look on his ugly face, behind the belligerence, was so vulnerable and intense. Vulnerable? But Sandy had his ticket. Sandy was going on. "Send him to Pulaski's," I said. "Probably needs an extra grease monkey. Now let me get back to work, huh?" "Could you take him over there?" Sandy said very quickly. "That's the favor, boss." "Sandy, I'm awfully busy." I looked at him again. "Oh, all right." "Hey, boss," Sandy said as I slid from behind the desk. "Remember that thing you asked me if I ever had when I was a kid?" It took a moment to come back to me. "You mean an ecologarium?" "Yeah, that's the word." He grinned. "The kid boy's got one. He's right outside waiting for you." "He's got it with him?" Sandy nodded. I walked toward the hangar door, picturing some kid lugging around a 6x6 plastic cage. Outside, the boy was sitting on a fuel hydrant. I'd put a few trees there, and the day light from the illumination tubes arcing the street dappled the gravel around him. He was about 14, with copper skin and curly black hair. I saw why Sandy wanted me to go with him about the job. Around his waist, as he sat hunched over on the hydrant with his toes spread on the metal base flange, was a wide-linked yellow belt. Golden. He was looking through an odd jewel and brass thing that hung from a chain around his neck. "Hey!" He looked up. There were spots of light on his blue-black hair. "You need a job?" He blinked. "My name's Vime. What's yours?" "You call me Anne?" The voice was even, detached, with an inflection that is golden. I frowned. "Nickname?" He nodded. "And really?" "Androcles."
Oh. My oldest kid is dead. I know it because I have all sorts of official papers saying so. But sometimes it's hard to remember. And it doesn't matter whether the hair is black, white, or red. Well, let's see if we can put you to work somewhere. Come on. Anne stood up, eyes fixed on me, suspicion hiding behind high glitter. What's the thing around your neck? His eyes struck it and bounced back to my face.
Cousin?
He asked. Huh? Then I remembered the golden slang. Oh, sure. First cousins. Brothers, if you want.
Brother,
Anne said. Then a smile came tumbling out of his face, silent and volcanic. He began loping beside me as we started off toward Pulaski's.
This,
he held up the thing on the chain,
isn't a colligarium. Want to see?
His diction was clipped, precise, and detached. But when an expression caught on his face, it was unsettlingly intense. Oh, a little one. With microorganisms? Anne nodded. Sure, let's have a look. The hair on the back of his neck pawed the chain as he bent to remove it. I held it up to see. Some blue liquid, a fairly large air bubble, and a glob of black speckled gel in a transparent globe, the size of an eyeball. It was set in 2 rings, one within the other, pivoted so the globe turned in all directions. Mounted on the outside ring was a curved tongue of metal, at the top of which was a small tube with a pin-sized lens. The tube was threaded into a bushing, and I guess you used it to look at what was going on in the sphere.
Self-contained, explained Anne. The only thing needed to keep the whole thing going is light. Just about any frequency will do, except way up on the blue end. And the shell cuts that out.
I looked through the brass eyepiece. I'd swear there were over 100 life forms with 5 to 50 stages each. Spores, zygotes, seeds, eggs, growing and developing through larvae, pupae, buds, reproducing through sex, syzygy, fission. And the whole ecological cycle took about 2 minutes. Spongy masses like red lotuses clung to the air bubble. Every few seconds one would expel a cloud of black things that wrinkled bits of carbon paper into the gas where they were attacked by tiny motes I could hardly see even with a lens. Black became silver. It fell back to the liquid like globules of mercury and coursed toward the jelly that was emitting a froth of bubbles. Something in the froth made the silver beads reverse direction. They reddened, sent out threads and alveoli, until they reached the main bubble again as lotuses. The reason the lotuses didn't crowd each other out was because every 8 or 9 seconds a swarm of green paramecia devoured most of them. I couldn't tell where they came from. I never saw one of them split or get eaten, but they must have had something to do with the thorn balls, if only because they were either thorn balls or paramecia floating in the liquid, but never both at once. A black spore in the jelly wiggled, then burst to the surface as a white worm. Exhausted, it laid a couple of eggs, rested until it developed fins and a tail, then swam to the bubble where it laid more eggs among the lotuses. Its fins grew larger, its tail shriveled, splotches of orange and blue appeared, till it took off like a weird butterfly to sail around the inside of the bubble. The motes that silvered the black offspring of the lotus must have eaten the party-colored fan because it just grew thinner and frailer till it disappeared. The eggs by the lotus would hatch into bloated fish forms that swam back through the froth to vomit a glob of jelly on the mass at the bottom, then collapse. The first eggs didn't do much except turn into black spores when they were covered with enough jelly. All this was going on amidst a kaleidoscope of frail, wilting flowers and blooming jeweled webs, vines and worms, warts and jellyfish, symbiotes and saprophytes, while rainbow herds of algae careened back and forth like glittering confetti. One rough-rinded galoot, so big you could see him without the eyepiece, squatted on the wall, feeding on jelly, batting his eye spots, while the tide surged through quivering tears of gills. I blinked as I took it from my eye. "That looks complicated." I handed it back to him.
Not really.
He slipped it around his neck.
Took me 2 weeks with a notebook to get the whole thing figured out. You saw the big fellow?
The one who winked?
Yes. Its reproductive cycle is about 2 hours, which trips you up at first. Everything else goes so fast. But once you see him mate with a thing that looks like a spider web with sequins, same creature, different sex, and watch the offspring aggregate into paramecia, then dissolve again, the whole thing falls into—"
"One creature," I said. "The whole thing is a single creature." Anne nodded vigorously.
"Has to be to stay self-contained."
The grin on his face whipped away like a snapped window shade. A very serious look was underneath.
"Even after I saw the big fellow mate, it took me a week to understand it was all one."
"But if Goofus and the fishnet have paramecia—" I began. It seemed logical when I made the guess.
"You've seen one before."
I shook my head. "Not like that one, anyway. I once saw something similar, but it was much bigger, about 6 feet across." Anne's seriousness was replaced by horror. I mean, he really started to shake.
"How could you ever even see all the stuff inside, much less catalogue it? You say this is complicated?"
"Hey, relax, relax," I said. He did, like that. "It was much simpler." I explained and went on to describe the one our kids had made so many years ago as best I remembered.
"Oh," Anne said at last, his face set in its original impassivity.
"It wasn't microorganisms. Simple." "Yes."
He looked at the pavement.
"Very simple."
When he looked up, another expression had scrambled his features. It took a moment to identify.
"I don't see the point at all."
There was surprising physical surety in the boy's movement. His nervousness was a cat's, not a human's, but it was one of the psychological qualities of Golden. "Well," I said, "it showed the kids a picture of the way the cycles of life progress." Anne rattled his chain.
"That is why they gave us these things. But everything in the one you had was so primitive. It wasn't a very good picture."
"Don't knock it," I told him. "When I was a kid, all I had was an ant colony. I got my infantile Weltanschauung watching a bunch of bugs running around between 2 plates of glass. I think I would have been better prepared by a couple of hungry rats on a treadmill, or maybe a torus-shaped fish tank alternating sharks with schools of piranhas. Get them all chasing around after each other real fast."
"Ecology wouldn't balance," Anne said. "You'd need snails to get rid of the waste, then a lot of plants to reoxygenate the water, and some sort of herbivore to keep down the plants because they'd tend to choke out everything since neither the sharks nor the piranhas would eat them."
Kids and their damn literal minds.
"If the herbivores had some way to keep the sharks off, then you might do it."
"What's wrong with the first one I described?" The explanation worked around the muscles of his face.
"The lizards, the segment worms, the plants, warts, all their cycles were completely circular. They were born, grew up, reproduced, maybe took care of the kids a while, then died. Their only function was reproduction. That's a pretty awful picture."
He made an unintelligible face. There was something about this wise-alecky kid who was Golden, younger than Allegra, older than Ratlet, I liked.
"There are stages in here,"
Anne tapped his globe with his pinky nail.
"that don't get started on their most important functions till after they've reproduced and grown up through a couple more metamorphoses as well. Those little green worms are a sterile end stage of the blue feathery things, but they put out free phosphates that the algae live on. Everything else just about lives on the algae, except the thorn balls. They eat the worms when they die. They're phagocytes in there that ingest the dust things when they get out of the bubble and start infecting the liquid."
All at once he got very excited.
"Each of us in the class got one of these. They made us figure them out. Then we had to prepare these recordings on whether the reproductive process was the primary function in life or an adjunctive one."
Something white frothed the corners of his mouth.
"I think grown-ups should just leave their kids the hell alone, go on and do something else, stop bothering us. That's what I said. That's what I told them."
He stopped. His tongue flicked the foam at the cusp of his lips. He seemed all right again. "Sometimes," I said evenly, "if you leave them alone and forget about them, you end up with monsters who aren't kids anymore. If you'd been left alone, you wouldn't have had a chance to put your 2 cents in the first place, and you wouldn't have that thing around your neck."
And he was really trying to follow what I was saying.
The moment past his rage, his face was as open and receptive as a 2-year-old's. God, I want to stop thinking about Aunt Tony.
That's not what I mean.
He wrapped his arms around his shoulders and bit on his forearm pensively. And you're not stupid, kid boy. You're cocky, but I don't think you're mean. You're golden. There was all my resentment out now, Ratlet. There it is, Allegra. I didn't grow up with a word, so it meant something different to me. Anne looked up to ingest my meaning. The tooth marks were white on his skin, then red around that. How long have you been one? He watched me, arms still folded.
They found out when I was 7.
That long ago?
Yes.
He turned and started walking again.
I was very precocious.
Oh, I nodded. Just about half your life, then. How's it been, little brother, being a golden? Anne dropped his arms.
They take you away from your group a lot of times. He shrugged. Special classes, training programs. I'm psychotic.
I never would have guessed. What would you call Ratlet? What would you call Allegra?
I know it shows, but it gets us through the psychic pressures at the reality breakdown at 20,000 light-years. It really does. For the past few years, though, they've been planting the psychosis artificially, pretty far down in the preconscious, so it doesn't affect our ordinary behavior as much as it does the older ones. They can use this process on anybody whose hormone system is even close to golden. They can get a lot more and a lot better quality golden that way than just waiting for us to pop up by accident.
As I laughed, something else struck me. Just what do you need a job out here for, though? Why not hitch out with some cousin or get a job on one of the intergalactics as an apprentice?
I have a job in another galaxy. There'll be a ship stopping for me in 2 months to take me out. A whole lot of star pits have been established in galaxies halfway to Undok. I'll be going back and forth managing roboy equipment, doing managerial work. I thought it would be a good idea to get some practical experience out here before I left.
Precocious. I nodded. Look, even with roboy equipment, you have to know one hell of a lot about the inside of how many different kinds of Keeler drives. You're not going to get that kind of experience in 2 months as a grease monkey. And roboy equipment? I don't even have any in my place. Pulaski's got some, but I don't think you'll get your hands on it.
I know a good deal already,
Anne said with strained modesty. Yeah? I asked him a not too difficult question and got an adequate answer. Made me feel better that he didn't come back with something really brilliant. I did know more than he did. Where'd you learn?
They gave me the information the same way they implanted my psychosis.
You're pretty good for your age. Dear old Luna Vocational. Well, maybe educational methods have improved. Come to think of it, I was just as old as you when I started playing around with those Keeler models. Dozens and dozens of helical inserts.
And those oily organum sensitives and all that graphite? Yes, brother, but I've never even had my hands in a Waldo.
I frowned. Hell, when I was younger than you, I could... I stopped. Well, of course, with roboy equipment, you don't need them. But it's not a bad thing to know how they work, just in case.
That's why I want a job.
He hooked one finger on his chain.
Brother-in-law Sandy and I got to talking, so I asked him about working here. He said you might help me get in someplace.
I'm glad he did. My place only handles big ships, and it's all Waldo. Me and an assistant can do the whole thing. Pulaski's place is smaller, but handles both inter- and intra-galactic jobs, so you get more variety and a bigger crew. You find Pulaski, say I sent you, tell what you can do and why you're out here. Belt or no, you'll probably get something better than a monkey.
Thanks, brother.
We turned off Cali D. Pulaski's hangar was ahead. Dull thunder sounded over the roof as the ship departed. As soon as I despair of the younger generation, I told him, one of you kids comes by and I start to think there's hope. Granted, you're a psychopath. You're a lot better than some of your older, distant relations. Anne looked up at me, apprehensive. You've never had a run-in with some of your cousins out here. But don't be surprised if you're dead tomorrow and your job's been inherited by some character who decided to split your head open to check on what's inside. I try to get used to you, behaving like something that isn't even savage. But, boy, kid, can your kind really mess up a guy's picture of the universe?
And what the hell do you expect us to act like?
Anne shot back. Spittle glittered on his lips again.
What would you do if you were trapped like us?
Huh? I said questioningly. You? Trapped?
Look, a spasm passed over his shoulders. The psychotechnician who made sure I was properly psychotic wasn't a Golden. Brother, you pay us to bring back the weapons, Dad. We don't fight your damn wars, Grandpa. You're the ones who take us away from our groups. Say we're too valuable to submit to your laws, then deny us our heredity because we don't breed true, no relative of mine.
Now, wait a minute.
Anne snatched the chain from around his neck and held it taut in front of him. His voice ground to a whisper. His eyes glittered. I strangled one of my classmates with this chain, the one I've got in my hands now.
One by one, his features blanked all expression.
They took it away from me for a week as punishment for killing that little girl.
The whisper stopped decibels above silence, then went on evenly.
Out here nobody will punish me, and my reflexes are faster than yours.
Fear lashed my anger as I followed the insanity flickering in his eyes.
Now,
He made a quick motion with his hands. I ducked.
I give it to you.
He flung the chain toward me. Reflexively, I caught it. Anne turned away instantly and stalked into Pulaski's. When I burst through the rattling hangar door at my place, the lift was coming down. Sandy yelled through the mesh walls, "Did he get the job?" "Probably," I yelled back, going toward the office. I heard the cage settle on the silicon cushion. Sandy was at my side a moment later, grinning. "So how do you like my brother-in-law, Androcles?" "Brother-in-law?" I remembered Anne using the phrase, but I'd thought it was part of the slang Golden. Something about the way Sandy said it, though. "He's your real brother-in-law?" "He's Joey's kid brother. I didn't want to say anything until after you met him." Sandy came along with me toward the office door. "Joey wrote me again and said since Anne was coming out here, he'd tell him to stop by and see me, and maybe I could help him out." How the hell am I supposed to know who Joey is? I pushed open the door. It banged the wall. "He's one of my husbands, the one who wrote me that letter you told me you'd read." "Oh, yeah, him." I started stacking papers. "I thought it was pretty nice of him, after all, that to tell Anne to look me up when he got out here. It means that there's still somebody left who doesn't think I'm a complete waste." "So what do you think of Androcles?" "He's quite a boy." I scooped up the mail that had come in after lunch, started to go through it, but put it down to hunt for my coveralls. "Anne used to come visit us when he got his 1 weekend a month off from his training program as Golden," Sandy was going on. "Joey's and Anne's parents lived in the reeds near the estuary, but we lived back up the canyon by Chroma Falls. Anne and Joey were pretty close, even though Joey's my age and Anne was only 8 or 9 back then. I guess Joey was the only one who really knew what Anne was going through, since they were both Golden." Surprised and shocked, I turned back to the desk. "You were married with a Golden?" One of the letters on the top of the pile was addressed to Allegra from Carlson's labs. I had a carton of the kid's junk in the locker and had gotten the mail. There wasn't much, sent to the hangar, as though I were waiting for somebody to come for it. "Yeah," Sandy said, surprised at my surprise. "Joey." So I wouldn't stand there gaping. I picked up Allegra's letter. "Since the traits that are Golden are polychromozoic, it dies out if they only breed with each other. There's a big campaign back in Galactic Center to encourage them to join heterogeneous proc groups." "Like Blue Point Siamese cats, huh?" I ran my blackened thumbnail through the seal. "That's right. But they're not animals, boss. I remember what they put that kid boy through for psychotic reinforcement of the factors that were Golden to make sure they stuck. It tore me up to hear him talk about it when he'd visit us." I pulled a portapix out of Allegra's envelope. Carlson's tries to personalize its messages. "I'm sure glad they can erase the conscious memory from the kids' minds when they have to do that sort of stuff." "Small blessings and all that." I flipped the portapix on. Personalized, but mass-produced. "Blessed adit." The little speaker echoed me. Pulaski and I had used Carlson's a couple of times, I know. I guess every other mechanic up here had, too. The portapix had started in the middle. Now it hummed back to the beginning. "You know," Sandy went on, "Joey was different, yeah, sort of dense about some things." "Allegra," beamed the chic, grandmotherly type Carlson's always uses for messages of this sort. "We were so glad to receive the urine sample you sent us by Mr. Rattlett last Thursday."
Even so, Joey was one of the sweetest men or women I've ever known. He was the easiest person in the group to live with. Maybe it was because he was away a lot. And now, just a week later, remember, Carlson's gives results immediately and confirms them by personalized porta-pics in 7 days, we are happy to tell you that there will be a blessed addition to your group. However, all right, he was different, reacted funny to a lot of things, but nothing like this rank, destructive stupidity you find out here at the Star Pit. The paternity is not Mr. Ratlett's. If you are interested, for your eugenic records, in further information, please send us other possible urine samples from the men in your group, and we will be glad to confirm paternity. I can't understand the way people act out here, boss, and that's why I'm pushing on. Thank you so much for letting us give you this wonderful news. Remember, when in doubt, call Carlson's.
I said to Sandy, "You were married with, you loved a golden?" Unbidden, the porta-pics began again. I flipped it off without looking. "Sandy," I said, "you were hired because you were a fair mechanic and you kept off my back. Do what you're paid for. Get out of here." "Oh, sure, boss." He backed quickly from the office. I sat down. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but when someone runs off and abandons a sick girl like that, it gets me. That was the trip to Carlson's, the one last little favor Ratlett never came back from. On-the-spot results and formal confirmation in 7 days. In her physical condition, pregnancy would have been as fatal as the withdrawal. And she was too ill for any abortive method I know of not to kill her. On-the-spot results. Ratlett must have known all that, too, when he got the results back, the results that Allegra was probably afraid of, the results she sent him to find. Ratlett knew Allegra was going to die anyway. And so he stole a golden belt. "Loving someone, I mean really loving someone," Allegra had said. "When someone runs off and leaves a sick girl like that, there's got to be a reason." It came together for me, like two fissionables. The explosion cut some moorings in my head I thought were pretty solidly fixed. I pulled out the books, plugged in the computer, unplugged it, put the books away, and stared into the ecologarium in my fist. Among the swimming, flying, crawling things, mating, giving birth, growing, changing, busy at whatever their business was, I picked out those dead-end green worms. I hadn't noticed them before because they were at the very edge of things, bumping against the wall. After they released their free phosphates and got tired of butting at the shell, they turned on each other and tore themselves to pieces. Fear and anger is a bad combination in me. I came close to being killed by a golden once, through that meanness and stupidity. The same meanness and stupidity that killed Allegra and Ratlett. And now when this damn kid threatens to... at first I had thought he was threatening to. I reached Jerg's a few minutes after the daylights went out and the street lamps came on, but I'd stopped in nearly a dozen places on the way. I remember trying to explain to a sailor from a star shuttle who was just stopping over at the Star Pit for the first time and was all upset because one woman golden had just attacked another with a broken glass. I remember saying to the three-headed bulge of his shoulder, "An ant colony. You know what it is? 2 pieces of glass with dirt between them, and you can see all the little ants make tunnels and hatch eggs and stuff. When I was a kid, I had an ant colony." I started to shake my hand in his face. The chain from the ecologarium was tangled up in my fingers. "Look." He caught my wrist and put it down on the counter. "It's all right now, pal. Just relax." "You look," I said as he turned away. "When I was a kid, all I had was an ant colony." He turned back and leaned his rusty elbow on the bar. "Okay," he said affably. Then he made the most stupid and frustrating mistake he possibly could have just then. "What about your aunt?" "My mother... I thought you were telling me about your aunt." "No," I said. "My aunt, she drank too much. This is about my mother." "All right, your mother, then." "My mother, she always worried about me, getting sick and things. I got sick a lot when I was a little kid. She made me mad. Used to go down and watch the ships take off from the place they called the Brooklyn Navy Yards. They were ships that went to the stars."
The sailor's oriental face grinned.
Yeah, me too. Used to watch them when I was a kid.
But it was raining and she wouldn't let me go.
Oh, that's too bad. Little rain never hurt a kid. Why didn't she call up and have it turned off so you could go out? Too busy to pay attention to you, huh? One of my old men was like that.
Both of mine were, I said. But not my ma. She was all over me all the time when she was there. But she made me mad. He nodded with real concern.
Wouldn't turn off the rain.
Nah, couldn't.
You didn't grow up where I did, narrow-minded, dark-side world. No modern conveniences. Off the main trading routes, huh?
Way off. She wouldn't let me go out, and that made me mad. He was still nodding.
So I broke it.
My fist came down hard on the counter, and the plastic globe in its brass cage clacked on the wood.
Broke it?
Sand, glass, all over the rug, on the windowsill.
What did you break?
Smashed it, stamped on it, threw sand whenever she tried to make me stop.
Sand? You lived on a beach?
We had a beach when I was a kid. A beach is nice for kids.
What did you break?
Let all the damn bugs out. Bugs and everything for days. Let 'em all out.
Didn't have no bugs on our beach. But you said you were off the main trading routes.
Let 'em out! I banged my fist again. Let everybody out, whether they like it or not. It's their problem whether they make it, not mine. Don't care. I don't... I was laughing now.
She let you go out, and you didn't care?
My hand came down on top of the metal cage hard. I caught my breath at the pain.
On our beach,
I said, turning my palm up to look. There were red marks across it.
There weren't any bugs on our beach.
Then I started shaking.
You mean you were just putting me on before about the bugs?
Hey, are you all right?
Broke it,
I whispered. Then I smashed fist and globe and chain into the side of the counter. Let 'em out! I whirled away, clutching my bruised hand against my stomach.
Watch it, kid boy.
I'm not a kid boy, I shouted. You think I'm some stupid half-crazy kid.
So you're older than me, okay?
I'm not a kid anymore.
So you're 10 years older than Sirius, all right? Quiet down or they'll kick us out.
I bulled out of Jerg's. A couple of people came after me because I didn't watch where I was going. I don't know who won, but I remember somebody yelling, "Get out, get out!" It may have been me. I remember later, staggering under the mercury street lamp, the whirlwind slapping my face, stars swarming back and forth below me, gravel sliding under my boots, the toes inches over the edge. The gravel clicked down the metal siding, the sound terribly clear as I reeled in the loud wind, shaking my arm against the night. As I brought my hand back, the wind lashed the cold chain across my cheek and the bridge of my nose. I lurched back, trying to claw it away, but it stayed all tangled on my fingers while the globe swung, gleaming in the streetlight. The wind roared. Gravel chattered down the siding. Later, I remember the hangar door ajar, and stumbling into the darkness, so that in a moment I was held from plummeting into nothing only by my own footsteps as black swerved around me. I stopped when my hip hit a workbench. I pawed around under the lip of the table till I found a switch. In the dim orange light, racked along the back of the bench in their plastic shock cases, were the row of master gauntlets. I slipped one out and slid my hand into it. "Who's over there?"
Go away, Sandy.
I turned from the bench, switched up the power on the wrist controls. Somewhere in the dark above, a 15-foot slave hand hummed to life. "Sorry, Buster, this isn't Sandy. Put that down and get away from there." I squinted as the figure approached in the orange light, hand extended. I saw the vibra-gun and didn't bother to look at the face. Then the gun went down. "Vime, baby, that you? What the hell are you doing here this hour of the night?"
Pulaski?
"Who'd you think it was?"
Is this your...
I looked around, shook my head.
But I thought it was my...
I shook my head again. Pulaski sniffed. "Hey, have you been a naughty kid boy tonight?" I swung my hand, and the slave hand overhead careened 20 feet. The gun jumped. "Look, you mess up my Waldo, and I will kill you. Don't care who you are. Take that thing off."
Very funny.
I brought the talon down where I could see it clawing shadow. "Come on, Vime, I'm serious. Turn it off and put it down. You're a mess now, and you don't know what you're doing."
That kid, the Golden.
"Did you give him a job?"
Sure. He said you sent him. Smart little so-and-so. He reholed a little yacht with a Roboy Animecania casethesizer just to show me what he could do.
If I knew a few more people who could handle them that well, I'd go all rowboy. He's not worth a damn with a Waldo, but as long as he's got that little green light in front of him, he's fine. I brought the talons down another 10 feet so that the spider hung between us. Well, I happen to be very handy with a Waldo, Pulaski. Vime, you're going to get hurt. Pulaski, I said, will you stop coming on like an overprotective aunt? I don't need another one. You're very drunk, Vime. Yeah, but I'm no clumsy kid boy who's going to mess up your equipment. If you do, you'll be— Shut up and watch. I pulled the chain out of my pouch and tossed it onto the concrete floor. In the orange light, you couldn't tell whether the cage was brass or silver. What's that? The claws came down, and the fine point tips, millimeters above the floor, closed on the ecologarium. Oh, hey, I haven't seen one of those since I was 10. What are you going to do with it? Those are 500 to 1 strength, you know. You're going to break it. That's right. Break this one, too. Oh, come on, let me see it first. I lifted the globe. Could be an eggshell, I said. Drunk or sober, I can handle this damn equipment, Pulaski. I haven't seen one for years. Used to have one. You mean it wasn't spirited back from some distant galaxy by Golden? From some technology beyond our limited ken? Product of the home spiral. Been around since the 50s. I raised it over Pulaski's extended hand. They're supposed to be very educational. What do you want to break it for? I never saw one. You came from some place off the routes, didn't you? They weren't that common. Don't break it. I want to. Why, Vime? Something got wedged in my throat. Because I want to get out, and if it's not that globe, it's going to be somebody's head. Inside the gauntlet, my hand began to quiver. The talons jerked. Pulaski caught the globe and jumped back. Vime! I'm hanging here at the edge. My voice kept getting caught on the things in my throat. I'm useless with a bunch of monsters and fools. The talons swung, contracted, clashed on each other. And then when the children get so bad you can't even reach them, the claw opened, reached for Pulaski, who jumped back in the half-dark. Damn it, Vime! Can't even reach the children anymore. The talons stopped shaking, came slowly back, knotting. I want to break something and get out. Very childishly, yes, because nobody is paying any attention to me. The claw jumped, even when I'm trying to help. I don't want to hurt anybody anymore. I swear it. So help me, I swear. Fine, take off the glove and listen. I raised the slave hand because it was about to scrape the cement. Vime, I want to pay some attention to you. Slowly, Pulaski walked back into the orange light. You've been sending me kids for 5 years now, coming around and checking up on them, helping them out of the stupid scrapes they get in. They haven't all been ratlets. I like kids, too. That's why I take them on. I think what you do is pretty great. Part of me loves kids. Another part of me loves you. Oh, Pulaski. I shook my head. Somewhere disgust began. It doesn't embarrass me. I love you a little and wouldn't mind loving you a lot. More than once I've thought about asking you to start a group. Please, Pulaski. I've had too many weird things happen to me this week. Not tonight, huh? I then turned the power off in the glove. Love shouldn't frighten you, no matter when or how it comes, Vime. Don't run from it. A marriage between us? Yeah, it would be a little hard for somebody like you at first, but you'd get used to it before long. Then when kids came around, there'd be 2. I'll send Sandy over, I said. He's the big-hearted marrying kind. Maybe he's about ready to try again. I pulled off the glove. Vime, don't go out like that. Stay for just a minute. Pulaski, I said, I'm just not that goddamn drunk. I threw the glove on the table. Please, Vime. You're going to use your gun to keep me here? Don't be like— I hope the kids I send over here appreciate you more than I do right now. I'm sorry I busted in here. Good night. I turned from the table. 9,000 miles away, the Steraplex turned too. Circles of silver dropped through the roof. Behind the metal cage of the relaxed slave claw, I saw Pulaski's large, injured eyes, circles of crushed turquoise, glistening now. And 9 feet away, someone said, Ma'am? Pulaski glanced over her shoulder. Anne, you awake? Anne stepped into the silver light, rubbing his neck.
That office chair is pretty hard, sister.
He's here? I asked.
Sure, Pulaski said. He didn't have any place to stay, so I let him sleep in the office while I finished up some work in the back. Vime, I meant what I said. Leave if you want, but not like this. Untwist.
Pulaski, I said, you're very sweet. You're fun in bed and a good mechanic, too. But I've been there before. Asking me to join a group is like asking me to do something obscene. I know what I'm worth.
I'm also a good businesswoman. Don't think that didn't enter my head when I thought about marrying you.
Anne came and stood beside her. He was breathing hard, the way an animal does when you wake it all of a sudden. Pulaski, you said it, I didn't. I'm a mess. That's why I'm not with my own group now.
You're not always like this. I've never seen you touch a drop before.
For a while, I said, it happened with disgusting frequency. Why do you think my group dropped me?
Must have been a while ago. I've known you a long time. So you've grown up since then. Now it only happens every half-dozen years or so. Congratulations. Come, have some coffee. Anne, run into the office and plug in the pot. I showed you where it was.
Anne turned like something blown by the whirlwind and was gone in shadow.
Come on,
Pulaski said. She took my arm, and I came with her. Before we left the light, I saw my reflection in the polished steel tool cabinet.
Ah, no.
I pulled away from her. No, I'd better go home now.
Why? Anne's making coffee.
The kid. I don't want the kid to see me like this.
He already has. Won't hurt him. Come on.
When I walked into Pulaski's office, I felt I didn't have a damn thing left. No, I had one. I decided to give it away. When Anne turned to me with the cup, I put my hands on his shoulders. He jumped, but not enough to spill the coffee. First and last bit of alcoholic advice for the evening, kid boy. Even if you are crazy, don't go around telling people who are not golden how they've trapped you. That's like going to Earth and complimenting a nigger on how well he sings and dances and his great sense of rhythm. He may be able to tap 7 with one hand against 13 with the other while whistling a tone row. It still shows a remarkable naivete about the way things are. That's one of the other things known throughout the galaxy about the world I come from. When I say primitive, I mean primitive. Anne ducked from under my hands, put the coffee on the desk, and turned back.
I didn't say you trapped us.
You said we treated you lousy and exploited you, which we may, and that this trapped you.
I said you exploited us, which you do, and that we were trapped. I didn't say by what.
Pulaski sat down on the desk, picked up my coffee, and sipped it. I raised my head. All right. Tell me how you're trapped.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pulaski said. I started drinking your coffee.
Shut up. How are you trapped, Anne? He moved his shoulders around as though he was trying to get them comfortable.
It started in Tiber 44 cluster. Golden were coming back with really bad psychic shock.
Yes, I heard about it. That was a few years back.
Anne's face started to twitch. The muscles around his eyes twisted below the skin.
Something out there. I put my hand on the back of his neck, my thumb in the soft spot behind his ear, and began to stroke the way you get a cat to calm down. Take it easy. Just tell me.
Thanks,
Anne said, and bent his head forward.
We found them first in Tiber 44, but then they turned up all over, on half the planets in every galaxy that could support any life, and a lot more that shouldn't have been able to at all.
His breathing grew coarser. I kept rubbing, and it slowed again.
I guess we have such a funny psychology that working with them, studying them, even thinking about them too much, there was something about them that changes our sense of reality. The shock was bad.
Anne, I said, to be trapped, there has to be somewhere you can't go. For it to bug you, there has to be something else around that can. He nodded under my hand, then straightened up.
I'm all right now. Just tired. You want to know where and what?
Pulaski had put down the coffee now and was dangling the chain. Anne whirled to stare.
Where? He said. Other universes.
Galaxies farther out? Asked Pulaski.
No, completely different matrices of time and space.
Staring at the swinging ball seemed to calm him even more.
No physical or temporal connection to this one at all.
A sort of parallel?
Parallel? Well, It was almost a draw. There's nothing parallel about them. Out of the billions to the billionth of them, most are hundreds of times the size of ours and empty. There are a few, though, whose entire spatial extent is even smaller than this galaxy. Some of them are completely dense to us, because even though there seems to be matter in them, distributed more or less as in this universe, there's no electromagnetic activity at all. No radio waves, no heat, no light. The globe swung. The voice was a whisper. I closed my fist around the globe and took it from Pulaski. How do you know about them? Who brings back the information? Who is it who can get out? Blinking, Anne looked back at me. When he told me, I began to laugh. To accommodate the shifting reality tensions, the psychotic personality that is golden is totally labile. Anne laughed with me, not knowing why. He explained, through his torrential hysteria, how with the micro-surgical techniques from Tiber 44 they had read much of the information from a direct examination of the creature's nervous system, which covered its surface like velvet. It could take intense cold or heat, a range of pressure from vacuum to hundreds of pounds per square millimeter, but a fairly small amount of ultraviolet destroyed the neural synapses, and it died. They were small and deceptively organic because in an organic environment they appeared to breathe and eat. They had 4 sexes, 2 of which carried the young. They had clusters of retractable sense organs that first appeared to be eyes, but were sensitive to 12 distinct senses, stimulation for 3 of which didn't even exist in our continuum. They traveled around on 4 suction cups when using kinetic motion for ordinary traversal of space, were small, and looked furry. The only way to make them jump universes was to scare the life out of them, at which point they just disappeared. Anne kneaded his stomach under his belt to ease the pain from so much laughter. Working with them at Tiber 44 just cracked up a whole bunch of golden. He leaned against the desk, panting and grinning. They had to be sent home for therapy. We still can't think about them directly, but it's easier for us to control what we think about than for you. That's part of being golden. I even had one of them for a pet, up until yesterday. The damn creatures are either totally apathetic or vicious. Mine was a baby, all white and soft. He held out his arms. Yesterday it bit me and disappeared. On his wrist there was a bluish place, centered on which was a crescent of pinpricks. Lucky it was a baby. The bites infect easily. Pulaski started drinking from my cup again as Anne and I started laughing all over. As I walked back that night, black coffee slopped in my belly. There are certain directions in which you cannot go. Choose one in which you can move as far as you want. Sandy said that. He did. And there was something about Sandy very much like someone golden. It doesn't matter how, he's going on. Under a street lamp, I stopped and lifted up the ecologarium. The reproductive function, was it primary or adjunctive? If, I thought with the whisky lucidity always suspect at dawn, you consider the whole ecological balance a single organism, it's adjunctive, a vital reparative process along with sleeping and eating, to the primary process, which is living, working, growing. I put the chain around my neck. I was still half soused, and it felt bad. But I howled. Androcles, is drunken laughter appropriate to mourn all my dead children? Perhaps not. But tell me, Ratlet, tell me, Allegra, what better way to launch my live ones who are golden into night? I don't know. I know I laughed. Then I put my fists into my overall pouch and crunched homeward along the edge, while on my left the whirlwind roared.